Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is neglected by parents and his Madara grandson part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. The hospital was eerily silent in Konoha no Sato, the village hidden in the leaves. Patients were sleeping, the night shift nurses attending them. The doctors were going over medical records. However, 4 doctors were away from their usual posts, as a late-night call ripped them from their usual stations. Why, one may ask? 'Twas the birth of the 4th Hokage's children. Twins to be exact. It was a special occasion for more than just a mother and father, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. Minato was a 22-year-old man with spiky blonde hair with 2 bangs that framed his face, angular jaw, and piercing blue eyes. He often wore blue shinobi pants, black sandals, blue, long-sleeve undershirt with a jonin flak jacket over it with a cloak with red flames licking the bottom and had the kanji for the 4th Hokage on the back. Kushina was a very beautiful 20-year-old woman with long, elegant red hair with a green clip holding it back from being in front of her face close to her left temple. She had violet eyes and cute round face that made men swoon. It was a special occasion for the father of Minato, Madara Uchiha, and half-brother of the twins going to be born, Aito Uchiha. Though Minato knew of either's existence or their roles in his life. When Minato was born, his mother dying shortly after childbirth, after 1 year, Madara put him in an orphanage but not before placing seals at the back of both eyes as to not awaken the Sharingan. Thankfully, Minato did not receive the black hair. When Minato was 15, it was a week just after his birthday that he had listened to his sensei's, Jiraiya of the Sannin, advice about practicing with the opposite gender so that he could be at least a little experienced when he and Kushina started to date, and then have sex, even though the first time they had sex was when she also got pregnant. The lab rat, one would say, was Mikoto Uchiha's older sister, Akira Uchiha. Akira was a loyal fangirl of Minato as to how easily she consented, and Minato had explicitly told her that this was a 1, maybe 2-time thing, yet she agreed wholeheartedly to the proposition. However, Akira had different plans and poked a hole in the condom Minato was going to be using when he wasn't looking, and when he asked her if she had taken her pill, she said yes, and so the two carried it out not once, but twice, Minato falling for the same thing twice as well. After Akira had visited the doctors a few weeks later, and confirmed she was pregnant, she was going to the Uchiha compound to tell her family, but she was taken by Madara for the 9 months to give birth to Aito, and then another month to make a full recovery. Madara instilled a sense of duty into Akira as to willingly give up Aito, but this was before placing a seal on her tongue as an assurance she would not spill anything, as well as effectively killing any affectionate emotions Akira had for Minato. She was secretly dropped off back at the Uchiha compound via Kamui. While the clan head did not ask questions, he just accepted his daughter back into the clan, and Kushina was oblivious to the whole thing. So for the past 7 years, Aito was trained vigorously with Madara in the Kamui dimension or in the real world. Anyone would be surprised by the fact that a 7-year-old could be on par with a low chunin and mid to high chunin with his 2-tomode Sharingan. His power would skyrocket when puberty would kick in because of the physical growth. Alright, Kushina-chan, push! Biwako, the wife of the 3rd Hokage, yelled as Minato held Kushina's hand. I am pushing! The red-hot habanero yelled back, making Minato hold back a chuckle. He looked at Kushina's heartbeat monitor to see it pulsing. She's under some pretty powerful sleeping agents, yet she's still awake. By Kami, Kushina Biwako thought, though her musings were cut short, a roar cut through the entire village's sleeping time. It was silent except for Kushina's grunts of pain while Minato rushed over to the window to see the Kyuubi walking towards the village about 5 miles out. Kyuubi! What is it doing here? Wait, this could finally give us the one-up against Kuma we've been looking for. Minato shouted in his mind with glee, his will of fire burning furiously. Is that the Kyuak? Kushina was cut off as she experienced another shot of pain go through her system. Yes, Minato said in awe. We need a Jinchuriki, but who? There's no one giving birth right now except AHA. Minato turned to Kushina, of which had their firstborn in her hands. A boy they were going to call. Had he really zoned out enough to not hear her giving birth? Kushina, he started as a doctor took Naruto from her. Miniature earthquakes going all throughout Konoha as the Kyuubi made its way towards the walls about a mile out. Yes, Minato-kuen? She chopped up the words as she held her stomach. You and I both know that the Kyuubi is what we need to get an upper hand with Kumo and the other villages. He trailed off. Ack! She cried out as she held her abdomen softly, the other baby about to be pushed through. Why yes, but we can't tame the Kyuubi. We need a Jinchuriki, absolutely not. She yelled before holding her abdomen yet again in pain. IW will not allow you to use our children. She yelled. Calm down, Kushina. You need to be calm or the baby won't come out. It will just hurt you and the baby in the long run. Biwako warned. Kushina calmed down but still met Minato with a stern gaze. It's the only way, Kushina. We can't let the Kyuubi go on a rampage throughout Konoha. We have to seal it. Minato yelled back. If there were any other children, I'd do it with them, but the child has to be at under a week old or the person must have extremely strong chakra coils. He said as the second baby was birthed. This one was a girl they would name Kimiko. Mito-sama's life was hard when people knew of her status as a Jinchuriki. She stayed holed up in the Senjutsu compound for most of the remainder of her life because people shunned her for being the demon. Kushina responded as she tried to stand but was only pushed back down by Biwako. We can't argue about this, Kushina. I'm going to hold off the Kyuubi. You need to make your mind up, because I will not allow that beast to destroy my village. He responded as he opened the window, threw a Hiraishin kunai out of it before flashing away in a yellow light. He's right, Kushina-chan the Sandame spoke as he entered the room in his samurai-like armor, making her glare at him. However, I do not agree with the Jinchuriki being your children, his aged eyes traveling over to the two peacefully sleeping children in Kushina's arms. That was before his gaze traveled over to his wife's worried one. You're going out there, Koi? She asked worriedly while Hiruzen nodded. It's my duty, he spoke with a soft smile before walking over to her to kiss her on the forehead. What gives him the right to do that to my children? Kushina shouted, making the newly named Kimiko and Naruto, of which were wrapped in blue and pink blankets depending on their gender, to shift slightly. It's his duty as Hokage to do what's best for the village, but remember, I do not agree with him. Mito-sama's life was hard and cruel, but maybe these villagers will see these two in a different light. I will travel to the Senju compound to look through Mito-sama's notes on sealing a biju aside from the Shiki Fujin, Hiruzen said while Kushina growled a beastly growl. His reasons are selfish, I know, Kushina, but please see this in his perspective, he asked while she looked at her two children and nodded before a few tears fell from her eyes. Come back when you find anything Mito-sama had on sealing a biju, she spoke through the tears. She did not want her children to go through what Mito-sama went through. Of course, Kushina-chan, Sarutobi spoke with a curt nod as he jumped out of the window and made his way towards the Senju compound behind the Hokage heads. Elsewhere, Aito, a deep and authoritative voice spoke from atop the Kyuubi, of which was about a mile away from Konoha now, many ninja lining its walls. That voice belonged to none other than Madara Uchiha, the co-founder of Konohagaku no Sato, first exile of Konoha, and first to attain the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. He was dressed in metal, crimson-colored samurai armor that covered his chest, the sides of his thighs, crotch area, and top half of his arms that extended upward to cover the sides of his face. He wore a loose-fitting, long-sleeve shirt with the sleeves rolled up to the mid-part of his forearm. He had black gloves on, black boots, black, loose-fitting pants that had tape extending from his ankle to his mid-shins. He also wore a piece of black cloth under his armor from his waist to his knees in an almost skirt-like fashion. He had his gunbai war fan on his back with a segmented chain attaching said gunbai to a sickle on his hip as well as in his shirt so that they would not be separated from him. Yes, Aji-sama? The 7-year-old spoke in submissive tone. Do you remember your part in the plan? Madara asked, not even bothering to look back at the boy behind him as he watched the Kyuubi make his way towards Konoha, Madara's eternal Mangekyo putting said beast under a powerful genjutsu to do his bidding. Most thought that any Mangekyo could control a tailed beast, however only an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan could do that job. Of course, Aji-sama. I am to decimate the Uchiha clan, Aito spoke. Aito had short hair and charcoal eyes and roundish face, someone could point towards him being 7. He wore the Uchiha clan's traditional clothing. This attire included a pair of black pants and gloves, with a white, presumed form-fitting shirt underneath. Over that he wore a purple, high-collared, long-sleeve mantle that split down the lower half and had the Uchiha crest on the back. Around his waist he wore a simple, light purple obi and a belt. And if you're having trouble figuring it out, it's his Shippuden wartime outfit minus the mask. Yes. However, their prodigy, Shursui Uchiha, is a part of ANBU. He is far above your league and has the 3 Tomode Sharingan. He is only 10 years old, however is mid-jonin level in strength. He will most likely be fighting the Kyuubi, but when or if he comes back to the Uchiha estate, you are to leave immediately no matter how many Uchiha are left. Am I clear? Madara said commandingly while turning back to look at Aito, of which the former had his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan active. Yes, Aji-sama, Aito spoke as he disappeared in a puff of smoke signifying he had left in a shunshin. The heir to my name will be decided between Minato's 2 sons. The daughter is unimportant, he told himself. He then jumped off the Kyuubi just as the Ninetales swiped at village's walls with its clawed hand. Madara heard screams as he made his way to the top of the Hokage monuments to overlook the destruction about to be caused personally. He crossed his arms as the wind blew his mane of black hair and clothing. Madara didn't blink as the Kyuubi let compressed, and albeit weaker, forms of the Bijudama be released into the village, causing fires to start and for people to die. He released a chuckle as he watched the civilians cower to their bunkers and for the shinobi to try and fight the mighty Ninetales. I trust everything is going according to plan? Madara spoke as he felt a presence appear behind him, not even bothering to look to see the Sandane walking up to him. Yes. I am going to the Senju compound now to receive the necessary sealing supplies to seal the Kyuubi. Is Aito heading towards the Uchiha compound? Hiruzen asked before he flinched as he watched the carnage unfold in the village hidden in the leaves. Yes, he is. I see Minato's quest for power is getting the better of him. When I acquire Minato's other son, I will have a blood clone take his place. What are you planning to separate the Kyuubi into? Madara asked, still not looking at Hiruzen. I was planning to split the Ing chakra into young Naruto, the soul and Yang chakra into Kimiko, Hiruzen explained. Good. The blood clone will have no traces of the Kyuubi's chakra, thus making it to where Minato's wife and Minato will focus more on the girl more than Naruto. Blood clones share not only experiences but emotions as well. When Naruto comes back here, shortly after I am dead, he will dispel the clone and gain all of the negative and positive emotions from the clone, thus making it to where he himself will have negative feelings for his family, deadening his emotions further. He will be the perfect replacement for me or Obito, and young Obito has a head start already. Madara finished with a restrained grin. What will my part in this be? The Sandaime asked as he took in the information being placed before him. You will train the blood clone while I train the real Naruto in either the real world or the Kamui dimension. It will be the equivalent to 30 years of training when he receives the memories from his clone. My training will begin as soon as the boy can walk and understand the difference between yes and no. Yours will probably begin when Naruto is 5 years old. What you will be teaching him will be earth and water jutsus primarily, and how to wield them properly. I will teach him his fire affinity, chakra control, and how to properly wield his Sharingan like a true Uchiha should. Madara spoke as he watched the fourth Hokage redirect a giant Bijudama with his beloved Hiroshin technique. From what Madara had observed, that jutsu was annoying as piss, though the intangibility ability his Sharingan had was the perfect counter. How do you know he has those 3 affinities? Hiruzen asked as he saw an explosion a few miles away outside the walls. He had to thank Kami that Minato had Hiroshin seals everywhere outside Konoha's walls. I am a sensor type, my boy, or have you forgotten with your old age? Madara chuckled hollowly. It is also good as Minato's wife has the lightning affinity while Minato has wind. I can practically feel the gap being created between parent and child already. Madara grinned wider as either parent had a fire affinity, water or earth. Why do you want to separate the family so much? The Sandaime asked. Minato was a mistake that was born into this world and always will be. That is why I sealed his Sharingan forever. He has given me heirs to my name, yes, but he was nothing more than a catalyst to something greater, and always will be. Obito and Naruto are the prime examples, Madara continued to explain as he watched Minato summon a giant frog to combat the fox. As to why? Like I told you, Naruto must be free of burdens such as his family if he wants to progress. They will hinder his growth, so I will attempt to cut the ties that haven't even been made yet. Silence ensued save the Kyuubi's occasional roar and the shouts of shinobi below. Have you sent a clone to gather the required materials? Madara asked the former Hokage. I did as soon as you arrived on top of the monument, the 50-year-old man explained. Good, Madara responded before a chuckle escaped his lips. Remind me again why you serve me? He asked with some mirth in his voice. In my old age, I seem to have forgotten. You don't look a day over 30, Hiruzen chuckled. You raised me when I lost my parents in the First Shinobi World War. You trained me, you looked out for me, and you will always have my allegiance, Tsu-sama. Hiruzen spoke while Madara chuckled once more. Good, he said simply as his dojutsu-enhanced eyes caught sight of Obito running along rooftops towards the Uchiha district. With Minato, 10 minutes earlier, Minato disappeared in a flash of yellow just as a beam of raw chakra fired from the Ninetales impacted a building next to him, resulting in the decimation of said building, a fire starting in the husk of the mass of wood and tile. I'm gonna have to pay for that later, at least the cost is well worth the reward. He chuckled as he landed on a nearby roof just as several ANBU landed around him in the kneeling position. Hokage-sama, what are your orders? One spoke in a calm voice. This on had a beige cloak on, signifying that he was the ANBU commander, as well as a Inu mask that had thick, pointed stripes originating from the forehead and either cheek. We are to hold off the Kyuubi until the Sandaime gathers the necessary materials for its sealing, Minato spoke while each nodded. He noted that one had on a hawk mask, short black hair, and charcoal eyes, marking him as none other than Shursui Uchiha, the Uchiha prodigy as well as pride and joy. He had a tanto, Japanese short sword, strapped to his back as well as traditional ANBU armor. Hawk, you are to gather any available genin and escort the civilians in the eastern part of Konoha to the bunkers. Salamander, Cat, you two are with me, Minato told the 3 ANBU while each nodded. Hawk shunshin ing to the eastern half of Konoha to gather the genin stationed at the academy, the ANBU commander going to gather any other ANBU, Jonin and Chunin to attack the Kyuubi head-on. In a flash, Minato and the 2 ANBU flew off into the night, screaming civilians below them as they rocketed towards the roaring Kyuubi, its tails flailing around menacingly as it stomped its massive foot down onto the ground, killing any civilians or shinobi unlucky enough to be below the paw. Buildings were decimated as the beast walked through Konoha and fires raged. Civilians were screaming as they thought the apocalypse had begun. Jutsu after jutsu flew at the giant beast, only for it to shrug the attacks off. The Ninetales was a few hundred yards inside Konoha as the Yondaime stood in front of the beast with a mass of shinobi, and Kunoichi behind him making it look down at the blonde-haired man. Minato swore he saw the beast crack a grin before he saw it charging a Bijidama, making the Hokage's eyes go wide as he looked behind him in the direction of where the beast wanted to fire the giant orb of destruction. It wanted to fire at the hospital, so the beast has some sort of intellect after all, Minato thought as he disappeared in a flash of yellow towards the hospital. I hope this works, he muttered as he prepared a Hirishin kunai just above Kushina's hospital room. The orb of destruction flew over buildings as it rocketed to the 4-story high hospital. It would have impacted had not Minato's Hirishin redirecting it to a training ground outside the village. Minato flashed back to the battleground of destroyed building and dead leaf shinobi and kunoichi. Looks like I'll need help for this one, he spoke as he flew through hand seals and then bit his thumb before slamming it to the ground, seals spreading everywhere just as a large toad was summoned. Gamabunta! Minato yelled out to the frog he was sitting on. Wait, what the hell? What do you need my help for, Gaki? Gamabunta roared just as he looked forward. Oh hee, Kyubi, well never mind, the giant frog chuckled. You need my help? He asked his summoner, of which nodded. I'll try my best then, Gaki, Bunta said as he jumped in the air, drawing his sword quickly to bring it down towards the Ninetales, only for said Biju to jump back, closer to the destroyed section of the walls. With Obito, the young Sharingan wielder ran stealthily along the rooftops of Konoha towards the Uchiha district, eyes glancing towards the Hokage monument where his Aji-sama was located. Madara had explained to him why the current Uchiha clan had to be wiped out. He explained that it had to be replaced by true Uchiha such as Obito's half-brother and himself. Obito ran and ran until he made it to a large, pale blue gate that looked to be sealed tight with Uchiha crest embroidered on it. This must be it, Obito thought as he jumped on a nearby roof to see a couple dozen Uchiha in Shunin or Jonin flak jacket vests being preached to what Obito presumed as the clan head in a courtyard. Explosive tags and a cat-on jutsu should do the trick, Obito thought as he drew several kunai and attached explosive seals onto them. He had 4 kunai in his left hand while his right hand went through single-handed hand seals. And it is our duty to not get involved in this fight and to preserve the Uchiha name so that we may carry on the Sharingan dash. Fugaku was cut off as 4 kunai embedded themselves in 4 different Uchiha skulls before the kunai each went off, incinerating 8 other Uchiha caught in the blast radius. The clan head turned to his right only to see no one there, though he did look farther behind him to see a small child in purple attire and a large fireball. Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Fire release, great fireball technique, Obito shouted as the flames enveloped another 6 Uchiha including the clan head. Having the element of surprise really went in his favor as there were only 6 Uchiha left. He killed Fugaku-sama. One shouted in disbelief. He's just a kid, get him. Another shouted before each of the Uchiha members drew kunais. This hardly seems like a fair fight. Let's even this up a little, Obito said as he flew through hand seals, creating 5 water clones. Obito ducked just as an Uchiha hard charged him and elbowed said man in the rib cage, before kicking him in the sternum, making him fly back into a nearby wooden post. Obito jumped in the air after drawing several shuriken from his pouch. He then flung said pieces of metal at the downed man, effectively silencing him. Water Clone 1 charged another Uchiha and slid under the large man's legs before stopping himself with his hands. He then reared his legs back before kicking the man forward onto another waiting Water Clone's kunai. Water Clone 2, after using teamwork to kill an Uchiha, jumped in the air as a fireball flew at him. The Water Clone flew through hand science. Suetun, Suiro no Jutsu. Water release, water prison technique. It yelled as an unsuspecting Uchiha was trapped in the newly formed sphere of water, slowly drowning. Another Uchiha growled as he charged Water Clone 2, however, he was intercepted by a hail of kunai from his left. He spun in the air before landing on the ground, his 2-tomod Sharingan activating as he did so. Water Clone 3 said nothing as its own Sharingan activated. The older Uchiha gasped. What? An Uchiha? Why are you doing this to your own clan, boy? He growled out as he drew several kunai in each hand. The Water Clone said nothing again as it charged the man only to stop as the clan leader, Fugaku, phased in front of him with a tanto in hand. Before the Water Clone could react, the short sword swiped through it, resulting in it dropping into a pool of water. Obito was shocked as he looked at the singed face of Fugaku. I killed him! He shouldn't be alive! Having killed an entire bandit camp 2 months ago, Obito had already taken his first life, so now it didn't really matter. Obito did a series of flips as he flung a hail of kunai at the clan head. Kunai Kagebushin no Jutsu. Kunai Shadow Clone Technique, Obito shouted as the 8 kunai transformed into 80. The attack had kicked up a lot of dirt, though once it cleared, it seemed that Fugaku had used the previous member as a substitution for himself. Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Fugaku shouted behind Obito, making the 7-year-old turn around to dodge a large fireball. Fugaku flipped onto a nearby building just as the water prison deactivated, signifying the Uchiha inside was dead. A Water Clone appeared in front of him, offering a kick to the side of the head only for Fugaku to draw a kunai before blocking the kick. The clone flipped backward only for Fugaku to appear behind him and behead him, making the clone turn to water. Fugaku jumped into the center of the courtyard to see all 24 of the Uchiha dead and only himself remaining. His 3-tomod Sharingan activated just as Obito and the 3 surviving Water Clones to appear around him, each of them having their Sharingan activated. Why would you do this to your own clan, boy? Fugaku asked Obito as he looked at each of the water clones. My reasons are my own, Obito replied as each of the clones including himself ready to kunai and charged the clan head. Damn it, Sarutobi, where are you? Minato roared as he disappeared in a yellow flash to dodge another beam of red chakra that tore through many, many trees. Minato had successfully pushed the Kyuubi out of Konoha's walls with the help of Gamabunta. Said boss summon was current on top of the Kyuubi holding it down, though the beast's mouth was adamantly trying to kill the fourth Hokage by fire several explosive projectiles at it. You damn fox! Hold the fuck still! Gamabunta yelled at the Kyuubi as he slammed his hand down on its snout, making the beast growl lowly at him. I don't think he wants to, Gamashiro commented. I second that, Gamaken sighed. I'm here, Minato! A voice called out behind the current Hokage to see Hiruzen with both children in his arms with a large scroll attached to his back. Alright. Bunta! I'm going to go organize our forces while Hiruzen seals the Kyuubi. Got it? Minato yelled to the large toad. Whatever, Gaki. You owe me the biggest drink ever after this. Gamabunta yelled back, making Minato chuckle before he Hirishin it away. Hiruzen flew through hand seals after he had sat the two sleeping children down onto the soft grass of the clearing. Kuchios no Jutsu. Summoning technique, he yelled as he flung his hands down onto the ground. A puff of smoke appeared and then dissipated to reveal the Monkey King himself, Enma. Hiruzen? Why have you summoned me? Enma shouted as he looked around the clearing to see Gamabunta, Gamaken, and Gamashiro, sitting atop the Kyuubi, though the formers were struggling immensely. Oh hee, Hiruzen sighed. We're all summons out of it today? I need you to help those three, Enma. They won't last much longer. Hiruzen pleaded, making Enma nod immediately. The monkey then grew to about 3 stories tall before taking hold of the Kyuubi's left arm and snout that were threatening to break free so that Gamabunta could focus on the other 4 tails, lower back, and left leg. Gamaken was focusing on the right leg and other 5 tails while Gamashiro was focusing on the Kyuubi's neck and right arm. Hiruzen took up a meditative pose as he unraveled the scroll around himself and the still sleeping children. He flew through more hand seals as 2 ghostly arms traveled out of the scroll, then a head, and then a long, white robe. He had lied to Minato as this was the only effective way of sealing the Kyuubi into separate portions. Why have you opened this scroll, mortal? The death god bellowed. I want to seal the Kyuubi as was this scroll's purpose, Shinigami-sama. Mito-sama has already paid you with her husband's soul. So if you may? Hiruzen told the death god. So you want to follow up on her deal then, eh? Then I am no one to argue, the Shinigami chuckled darkly as he turned to the Kyuubi. Who would you like me to seal this in, mortal? I would like you to seal the Yin chakra into the boy here, he said, pointing to Naruto, and to seal the soul and Yang chakra of the Kyuubi into the girl. Hiruzen finished as he pointed to the sleeping form of Kimiko. So you say, it shall be so. The Shinigami chuckled again as he drew the dagger from his mouth before letting his ghostly hand extend toward the Kyuubi while the other arm separated into 2 and then into Naruto and Kimiko, with Obito. So, this is how it ends? I die to a kid? What kind of clan head am I? Fugaku chuckled weakly as he spat on the ground to get rid of some of the blood in his mouth. He gazed around the destroyed and aflamed courtyard and smiled weakly. He had at least 6 kunais sticking out of his back. As seeing as how I about to dies, why not spare a dying man the knowledge of who sent you? He asked the bleeding but standing Obito. Obito's uniform was cut in many places, he had a scar going across his cheek, and had Fugaku's tanto in hand. Obito thought about it, and prepared the tanto to decapitate Fugaku. It is time for new and better Uchiha to take the title of the Uchiha name from your pitiful souls. My name is Obito Uchiha, bastard son of Minato Namikaze, and grandson to Madara Uchiha. And I am your executioner. Obito finished as he looked at the wide eyes of Fugaku before beheading said man, letting the head roll to the ground before the body fell with it. Obito's eyes traveled to a nearby woman who was on her knees at the doors of the main Uchiha mansion. As Sochi? She said weakly, making Obito's eyes widen briefly. The woman was wearing a simple blue kimono with an undershirt. She had charcoal eyes, soft complexion, and long black hair. Who are you, woman? Obito demanded as he walked up to her only for her to envelope him in a hug. And my name's Akira. And I'm your Keikasan, Sochi, she said with a large smile as she held left hand up in a peace sign just after she released him from the hug. Madara-sensei told me to expect you to be here, he told me to kill you and everyone else. Obito trailed off impassively, though Akira's smile never faded from her face. He then began to tear up. But I can't do it, Ka-san. Obito cried as he clung to her. She merely ruffled his hair and offered him another smile. I understand, Sochi-kun. I'm not afraid to die by your hands, but if you can't do it, then just knock me out and keep on with Madara-sensei's mission he gave you, she said happily. He could tell she wasn't lying when she said she wasn't afraid to die, but just nodded to her and smiled before wiping the tears. He appeared behind her with an elbow to the neck, effectively making her black out, but not before muttering one last sentence. I love you, Sochi-kun. Obito smiled slightly as he walked through the estate. I love you too, Ka-san, he said as the slaughter began. Unknown to him, A set of red eyes were watching him with a small smile on the beholder's face. With Hiruzen, the 3 toad summons dispersed just as the Kyuubi was sealed in its respective containers, with Enma dispersing shortly after the toads. Each of them grumbling that they would get some pretty big fucking treats for what they did. The Shinigami, however, stayed behind to look at Hiruzen and then to sniff the air. So you've been dealing with Madara Uchiha, have you? The death god chuckled darkly. Hiruzen picked up the 2 children and smiled at them before looking at the Shinigami. Yes, I have. I serve him because I owe him my life, Hiruzen explained. Then tell him, he had better do what he has to do quickly. His borrowed time is running out. The death god chuckled again before dispersing into thin air and for the scroll used earlier to burn up in a blue flame. I have 15 years, just in case you were wondering, Hiruzen, Madara explained just as he came out of a swirling vortex. So, will this be the last time I ever see you in person again, Tusama? Hiruzen asked sadly. Yes, Hiruzen. You do, however, get the privilege of training the possible heir to my name. So do cheer up, Madara chuckled. I won't disappoint you, Tusama, Hiruzen said with determination in his aged voice. Now Madara trailed off as he drew a kunai and took Naruto from the Sandaime Hokage. He then pricked the young boy's arm, making him whine slightly so that a drop of blood could trail down his arm. Madara did a single hand sign, and the drop of blood that had then fallen to the ground morphed into an identical-looking baby, a blood clone, the Jinchuriki seal on its stomach gone and a second blue blanket around its form. Hiruzen picked the baby up while Madara looked straight into Naruto's now awake blue eyes. He had no blemishes on his skin, just a normal-looking baby with blue eyes and blonde hair. A/NAK no whisker marks. Madara cast his gaze over to Kimiko and scoffed. She had blue eyes, 6 whisker marks, and red hair. This was a game only 2 could play. Kimiko would only hamper his game. After all, only a male Uchiha could take Madara's name. Madara nodded in Hiruzen's direction. Goodbye, Sochi, Madara said as he disappeared in a vortex. Hiruzen smiled sadly. Goodbye, Tusama, he whispered. Seconds later Minato arrived with several ANBU around him. So you sealed the Kyuubi into Kimiko? Minato asked as he saw the whisker marks that weren't there earlier. Yes. Kimiko had similar chakra to Mitosama's if I remember, so I thought it best to seal the beast inside of her, Hiruzen lied. Minato, however, nodded. All right. Good work. All of you. We have successfully reclaimed the Kyuubi. Minato cheered as the ANBU did as well. To please my wife, however, this will be an S-rank secret. Do not speak of her status to anyone unless I give permission. Am I clear? Minato commanded as the ANBU immediately silenced before nodding. Some, however, muttered the word whipped, making chuckles go around. Good. Now rest up. We have rebuilding to do tomorrow, he said with a smile, making the ANBU groan. With Obito, slaughter. That was the only word to describe what it was like in the Uchiha compound. No, more like massacre. That was the word one could describe it as. The Uchiha massacre. Bodies littered the homes and streets of the Uchiha district. Every man, woman, child, and infant was slaughtered by one man, one boy. There was only one family after that, and it was the clan head's family. Comprised of Issei Uchiha, female Itachi. Anyone? Check profile for link. The 2-week-old Sasuke. Original name I know. Check profile for link. Uchiha, and their mother Mikoto Uchiha. Obito made his way through Fugaku's old home towards the bedroom. That was the only room left as he had searched the whole home. He was down the hallway away from the master bedroom, tanto in hand with blood dripping from it signifying he had just made another kill. He was right in front of the door when he opened it to find Mikoto cradling Sasuke while Issei was in front of the bed with a kunai shakily in hand. Gee, get out of here. I don't want to hurt you, she stuttered as Obito looked at her impassively. She was wearing a pair of black shorts with the typical high-collared Uchiha vestments. She had long hair like her mother's and a set of charcoal black eyes. Issei Uchiha, he trailed off as he walked toward her with his tanto in hand. She charged at him. Issei, no! Mikoto shouted as Obito batted the small girl away with the flat of the short sword. Weak, just like your father, Obito spoke to Issei, making said girl's eyes go wide. Why you killed Fugaku? Mikoto stuttered as Obito merely nodded. He put up quite a fight, more than your pathetic other Uchiha did. What happened to the supposed Uchiha elite? I thought this clan was supposed to be strong, Obito spoke as he activated his Sharingan. It seems that I was misinformed, he added. He looked at the angry Issei. You want to avenge your father and your clan, don't you? He asked, making her grit her teeth but also to nod slightly. Then hate me, despise, let that be your driving cause to get stronger. Let no one stand in your way to get to me and to kill me, he said as he extended his arms to either side of him with a playful smirk written on his face. As for you two, he cast his gaze to Mikoto and the sleeping Sasuke. I will kill you just to make her drive that much bigger, he said while Mikoto's eyes widened slightly and for her to cover Sasuke with her body. Obito trekked forward, his tanto scraping the wood as he walked toward the woman and baby on the bed, his face adorning an impassive expression. He raised his sword above his head and brought it down only for it to be parried by Issei. He looked at her with cold eyes, though they widened slightly as he saw that they had a single tomo in each. So the threat of killing your family activated your Sharingan. Interesting, he muttered as he swung to the side with the flat of his blade on for her to duck and lunge at him, kunai in hand preparing to kill him. It was futile as she was flung against the wall by a water clone he made a moment after she got up. Pitiful, Aito spoke, using the talk as mind games to mess with her head and for her to become angry. He looked at Makoto and the infant. Now, where were we? He said as he started to walk towards them, only to stop as a person with black hair, hawk mask signifying his place in the NBU, and tanto in hand phased in front of him. Aito jumped to the other side of the room, his tanto ready, but then his stance slackened as he remembered his grandfather's words. Shursui Uchiha. He looked in the eyes of said Uchiha only to find them missing the tomo but with a black shuriken in its place. The Mangekyo Sharingan? Then you are truly out of my league. Aito paused as he started to swirl away in vortex. Remember my words, Isane Uchiha, he said as he phased out of existence just as Shursui swiped at him. Damn it, Shursui cursed as he turned around to comfort Mikoto-sama and her daughters. Kamui Dimension. I'm proud of you, Aito, for not killing your mother, Madara spoke as he cradled the infant Naruto in his arms as he rocked back and forth. He offered the infant a soft smile to Naruto, making the baby giggle happily. Why, Aji-sama? I failed you, Aito spoke submissively. You exuded the will to not follow an order from someone far stronger than you. That takes a strong will to do. For that I am proud of you. As well as leaving the clan head's former family alive. You could have killed each of them if you wanted to, but you gave each of them something to think on. A goal to achieve, Madara spoke. Good job, he added, making Aito blush slightly under the praise. This is your new Ototo, Aito, he said as he showed Aito the smiling Naruto. It looks like you have competition now, Madara joked while Aito chuckled nervously. Nice to meet you, Ototo. Aito smiled as he took Naruto from Madara's arms just as Naruto pulled on Abito's collar. He likes you, Madara chuckled as he gazed at the two half-brothers. Their relationship as brothers will grow and grow, but in the end, it will be those two on the battlefield, glaring at each other, prepared to kill each other. It will be glorious, Madara thought with glee. Naruto's cold and impassive gaze traveled to the old and dying Madara's, the old man on his deathbed in the Kamui dimension. It had been 15 years of absolute torture from the old man. Torture he called training, and Naruto didn't regret a second of it. One part of the training required Naruto to raise a rabbit. A simple rabbit for 1 year and then kill it before skinning it, gutting it, and then eating it. It was either that or lose a hand, and Naruto chose the former. It was brutal yet effective way of teaching Naruto how to kill and to not get attached to things. It started with animals, and like Aito, he took his first life on his 7th birthday. That also led to the development of the second tomo in his Sharingan, also like Aito. The three often made trips to the real world to carry out supply runs and for the two younger Uchiha to gain real-world experience, and to test their Sharingan abilities on the weak-minded. Naruto's knowledge and strategy and general intellect were higher than Madara's own, though it took more of a visual explanation than verbal when Madara taught him about the world and academics. When Naruto was 10, he was given his very own gunbai and sickle and could go toe-to-toe with his grandfather when it was gunbai and sickle only. When Naruto was 13, he opted to dress like his grandfather. He wore similar crimson armor with thick black streaks running along the arms, chest, back, and thighs in the same places his grandfather did, i.e. armor that covered his chest, the sides of his thighs that conjoined to cover his crotch, and top half of his arms that extended upward to cover the sides of his face. He wore a loose-fitting, long-sleeved shirt with the sleeves rolled up to the mid-part of his forearms. He had black gloves on, black boots, black, loose-fitting pants that had tape extending from his ankle to his mid-shins. He also wore a mantle under his leg armor. Naruto usually kept his sickle at his hip. He also had chakra disruption blades instead of usual kunai or shuriken. He also used segmented, chakra conducting chains that were used to attach his sickle and wore fan to him so they wouldn't be unattached from him. Naruto's physical appearance consisted of a pair of unforgiving, merciless, cold, hard, cerulean blue eyes that had long lost their shine, as well as a long mane of spiky yet tame dirty blonde hair with black streaks that reached his mid-back like his grandfather's and covered his right eye. He had a slim yet muscular build with tightly packed muscles that contained a lot of strength. When he was in the real world, women would often swoon at his appearance. He had an angular jawline, chiseled and handsome features, and a winning complexion. Every 2 months, Madara would send the Sandaime Hokage pictures of the real Naruto's appearance to make the Sandaime influence the blood clone of Naruto verbally to look more like the real Naruto. He didn't force it on the clone, he just merely would talk to him and suggest a certain style, and the blood clone complied every time. When the real Naruto would return to Konoha and take the blood clone's place, people would ask questions if they did not look alike with hair length or clothing style. Naruto had also lost his virginity to a random civilian woman when he was 13. He had seduced her mainly by whispering sweet nothings in her ear and then bedding her. He continued to seduce women each time Aito, his grandfather, and himself, would visit the real world since then. Sometimes it would be Kunoichi, and sometimes a Kage's wife. Though that was only the Sandaime Kazekage's wife, and the Kage was none the wiser. What was a civilian's name? Tsunami, was it? He could barely remember. He held no feelings for the women he slept with, he just used them to satisfy himself when his urges would surface, and then he would be gone before dawn. One would also be surprised how many virgins there were in the world, Naruto claiming many of them. Aito named his half-brother the Virgin Killer. Those two little words were something that always seemed to break through Naruto's cold visage, making the young Uchiha crack a small smirk every time he heard them. One could ask why a 13-year-old would be sleeping around with women. Naruto had embraced that even the strongest shinobi could die on any mission or at any given time, and decided to live it up, one could say, while he was still alive. The life of a shinobi was a notoriously short one, so he'd make the most of it. Naruto's Sharingan, like his half-brother and grandfather's, was connected to the Kamui dimension. He had awakened his base Sharingan at 5, second Tomo at 7, third Tomo at 8, and Mangekyo at 11 after Madara had trapped Naruto in its Tsukuyami and refused to let the boy out until he had killed a fake Aito. Aito had awakened his at 17, 1 year prior to Naruto's. One thing that baffled Madara was that Aito did not have access to the Susanoo, but his Mangekyo did not affect his eyesight in the slightest, as well as his Tsukuyami was distinctly more powerful than Madara's own and Naruto's, thus making it to where Aito's Mangekyo could control a Biju because of its magnificent genjutsu capabilities, with the Sanbai being the training dummy. Thought Madara was sure that without an eternal Mangekyo, Aito's Sharingan couldn't control above the 5 tails. Naruto's Mangekyo was distinctly shaped like a Fuma Shuriken, and his Susanoo was distinctly stronger than Madara's. Naruto's Stage 2 Susanoo could go up against Madara's Stage 4, and Naruto's Stage 4 Susanoo could go up against his grandfather's final Susanoo. Naruto's adeptness in his fire affinity was just below his grandfather's in that regard. He could now cast Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique, with a single hand seal and start fires with a snap of his fingers. Naruto could use Mokutan to a greater degree than Madara thanks to his Senju heritage. Madara did not focus on Mokutan, as Hiruzen had sent a letter saying that the blood clone was working on that as well, coupled with the independent water and earth jutsus. With a little Fuinjutsu training to boot, Naruto did not hate the Senjus like his grandfather, nor did Aito. They understood that the Senjus often put themselves up on a high horse, but they could cope as there was only one left in the world. Naruto's bond with Aito grew to where there was no line called half-brother in their relationship. It was just brothers. Madara coughed, making the two younger Uchiha snap their gaze to him. They also had two partners by their sides. Aito had a being known as Black Setsu by his side, while Naruto had a being known as White Setsu by his side, each made by Madara. Black Setsu was made with Madara's Ing release, and White Setsu was made by his Yang release. Both Setsus were eerily quiet as well. It seems my time has come to an end, he chuckled weakly. Aito Naruto, he said almost in a whisper, gaining their undivided attention. Yes, Aji-sama? They chorused. I have instilled into both of you a different light. Aito coughed. Remember my plan I have shared with you, he said, making Naruto grunt. He had never been told of the plan they were referring to, only that he was to stop it whenever it came to fruition. Of course, Aji-sama, he said, bowing in respect. Aito now wore an orange mask with a swirl revolving around his right eye and a simple black cloak. The 22-year-old's hairstyle did not change, as he preferred to keep it short. Naruto remembered to stop said plan at all costs. Cough, he said as he coughed into his hand. Whatever it may be, attempt to stop it and kill the man orchestrating said plan, he said, while Naruto simply shifted his gaze towards Aito, allowing a curt nod to follow. Now, Naruto, as my final gift to you, take my eyes, he said, making both younger Uchiha's eyes go wide slightly. The old and frail Uchiha reached up just as his own eyes shifted to his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. He then reached into the sockets before gently gripping them and taking them out of his sockets. Madara held them in one hand as he used his quickly dissipating chakra to make a glass jar and lid with fluid inside of it as to preserve the eyes for transport. Of course, Aji-sama, he said calmly as he took off his glove to take the eyes and lay the jar on the bed before opening it. He then placed the eyes in the jar before closing it and sealing in a seal on his armor. Naruto wiped his hand on his pant leg before placing his glove back over his hand. He would have to get someone to transplant the eyes as soon as possible. Naruto and Madara couldn't see it, pun intended, but there was a burning fury behind Aito's visible eye. He had been with Madara longer, and the old man decided to give his brother his eyes. Ridiculous. Naruto merely shifted his gaze slightly towards Aito as he felt the malice coming off of him. It was small shockwaves were reverberating to him, and Naruto understood that his brother was angry. And it was all thanks to the Kyuubi's chakra. What Naruto meant by traces was that the majority of the Kyuubi's chakra was no longer a separate entity in his body. He converted the beast's chakra into his, permanently augmenting his actual chakra to new heights. He was literally a tailed beast without a tail. If one would give an estimate, Naruto still had about 30% of the Kyuubi's chakra within him, but that was just so he could detect emotions and to use it for a healing ability higher than his own. So that meant, Naruto had no chakra cloak, no Biju mode, and could not morph into the Nine Tails. The old and now eyeless Uchiha couldn't help but chuckle as he also felt the anger, but it was more instinctual. That, however, was also part of his plan to drive a wedge between the two brothers. Silence ensued until Madara went into a coughing fit. Bury me if you wish or leave me here, I don't care. When one of you is dead by the other's hand, then my name is yours. Goodbye. He paused and chuckled one last time, and showed the world how true Uchiha do battle, and with those last words, the most legendary Uchiha to date, Madara Uchiha, died. In reality it was only a few minutes, but in the brothers' minds, it felt like an eternity as they simply stood there. One had his eyes open while the other had his eyes closed. One had his arms crossed, one had them hanging limply at his side. Both were in silent mourning as their grandfather died. Naruto shook his head before reaching down beside his grandfather's deathbed to pick up a large satchel. Inside the satchel were a number of Mokuton scrolls, fire jutsu scrolls he had yet to master, a summoning scroll he had yet to sign, and large-scale chakra control scrolls with instructions for Naruto's still-growing chakra coils. And Naruto accepted nothing less than perfection when it came to chakra control. It was just a quirk of his. Obito opened his eyes and did the same with another satchel. Thought this one was filled with different lightning, water, 2 summoning contracts he had yet to open and sign, and fire scrolls. There were no chakra control scrolls as his chakra coils had expanded to their maximum capacity, and he had also memorized chakra control techniques. They both slung their respective bags over their shoulders silently before the older of the two brothers put a hand on the younger brother's shoulder. They then swirled away after both sets put their hands on their respective masters in a vortex, leaving the deceased body of their grandfather behind. For the umpteenth time, Kimiko Uzumaki Namikaze sighed as she watched her academy sensei, Iruka Yumino, lecture about the upcoming genin exams. The instructor had been somewhat of a big brother to her over the years. He was really nice and would often take her out to ramen in a friendly way. She looked around the room to look at some of her friends. Her eyes first landed on Ino Yamanaka, the heiress to the Yamanaka clan. The girl had long, platinum blonde hair and a ponytail with ear bangs covering her right eye, pale blue eyes, and a face that would make boys swoon. She wore a short, purple, sleeveless blouse, with an open front purple apron skirt over a shorter, black skirt, with short, fishnet shorts underneath it. Next, her eyes landed on the Inuzuka twins, Kiba and Hana Inuzuka. Kiba had a feral appearance with black eyes and slit pupils, short and spiky brown hair, 2 fawn-like markings on both cheeks, and pronounced K9s. He wore what one could equate to a leather jacket with many zippers on it. He wore black shinobi pants that ended at the ankles with zippers on either leg going up to mid-calf also. He also had on black shinobi sandals that zipped. His dog, Akamaru, was a large white dog that often sat beside his desk in class. Hana Inuzuka was the tamer-looking one of the 2 twins. She had straight brown hair she often wore in a ponytail, as well as the classic red fangs signifying she was a part of the Inuzuka clan. She also had 2 bangs framing her face. She often wore a beige jacket with high collar, blue shorts over fishnet that extended lower than the shorts, and high-heeled sandals. Next was Hinata Hyuga. She had a set of lavender eyes and round face. She had purple hair that came down to her mid-back and 2 bangs that framed her face, also covering each temple that was shoulder length. Her current attire was comprised of a loose-fitting, long-sleeved, lavender and cream zip-up jacket with lavender cuffs over mesh armor with navy blue pants and black, low-heeled sandals. Next was Shikamaru Nara, the heir to the Nara clan. His hairstyle consisted of a pineapple-like fashion. He had a black t-shirt with gray designs, gray shinobi pants that went to the mid-calf, and tape that taped it down with black shinobi sandals. Next was Shino Aburame, the heir to the Aburame clan. He had on a pair of sunglasses and short brown hair. He wore a white/grayish coat with sleeves that extended past his hands and a hood that covered his head, chin, and mouth. He also wore a pair of blue shorts and black shinobi sandals. Next was Sasuko Uchiha, daughter of the late Fugaku Uchiha, Mikoto Uchiha, and sister to one of the most known former Anbu, Issane Uchiha. Sasuko had a beautiful complexion with her mother's charcoal eyes. She had a cute nose and pink lips. She had nice assets right at about a low D cup, and shapely legs. She had long, black hair tied in a ponytail stopping just above her buttocks, as well as 2 bangs covering either temple that stopped right above her breasts, as well as 3 distinct bangs on her forehead. She painted her fingernails and toenails black often while wearing black, low-heel sandals with high tops that were skin-tight and reached to about her mid-thigh. She also wore a deep purple mantle starting from her lower abdomen and ending about her mid-thigh with skin-tight shorts underneath it, but they were not visible, but they were definitely there. To keep the mantle in place, she had a thick purple rope tied around her waist twice and then tied in a knot, and that also acted as a place to keep her black chokoto sword she had named Grass Cutter she had gotten from her mother. As a shirt, she wore the traditional Uchiha high collar, grayish, short-sleeved shirt that distinctly showed her cleavage. Her last article of clothing was a set of black handguards that stopped her mid-forearm. Last but not least was Chuji Akimichi. He usually sported a red suit with plated armor on his torso, arms, and upper legs. Chuji is a husky teen, though he was kind to just about everyone who didn't make fun of his weight. On the armor, he has a red kanji on it for food. He also has long, spiky, brown hair that went to his lower back, a round face, and red swirls on both cheeks as well as looped earrings. A/N in case you haven't noticed, Sakura was not among the above listed. That is because she is a civilian in this FIC. Hooray! Kimiko decided to look in the window to look at her reflection. She sported long, spiky, red hair, think the color of Kushina's hair with Karui's spikiness, tied in a ponytail with curved bangs going to their left on her forehead. She had a beautiful, slightly tanned complexion, smooth and flat stomach with low D-cup breasts, naturally red lips, violet eyes, and a cute nose. Her usual outfit consisted of a skin-tight t-shirt with a turtleneck, and reached right above her belly button. Under that she wore a long-sleeve fishnet under the t-shirt with white tape covering her right arm. Above that, she wore gray ANBU torso armor, though it did not go past her t-shirt, so her stomach was still visible. She usually wore black gloves, and on her left arm, fishnet extended from her wrist to mid-bicep. She wore the classic shinobi pants with tape extending from the ankles to her knees with a red sash tied around her waist and red chokoto sword on her right hip. She also wore black sandals and often painted her toenails red. And on her right thigh was a spare, maroon, kunai pouch with tape around it as well. She also had her main pouch, though it was beige, just above her right buttock. She looked around the classroom while Irika's senseless banter was white noise in her ear. Naruto-kun's late again. Speaking of brothers, the door to the classroom opened slowly for everyone to see Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, or just Naruto as he preferred to be called. Some villagers that didn't hate him would often refer to him as Naruto Sarutobi because of how often the young man spent with the Sandaime. Naruto refused to be acknowledged as an Uzumaki or Namikaze in anyone's eyes because of what happened when Naruto was 8. Something that was rightfully his, something that was his birthright, his one dream was taken away from him, and most people were none the wiser except for Kimiko and a few select others. 7 years ago. Why don't you want to go to your birthday, Naruto-kun? Hiruzen asked the 8-year-old boy, of which was panting after learning Suiton, Suryudan no Jutsu, water release, water dragon technique. The technique was made possible by the boy's extremely large chakra reserves but took a toll on him because of his lack of control he would eventually be learning. The boy's eyes immediately hardened at the mention of the current day. Naruto's current appearance consisted of spiky dirty blonde hair with black streaks that went down to his shoulders, simple black t-shirt, and gray shorts. You know there's no one there for me, Naruto mumbled as Hiruzen pulled the boy in a one-armed hug as they looked up at the multicolored sky that was dusk. What about Kimiko-chan? Hiruzen asked. I don't want her to be sad because of me, Naruto responded. I know that isn't the only reason, Naruto-kun. Hiruzen spoke while Naruto deflated slightly. I don't want to go back, he said simply. Why is that? The former Hokage asked. I don't like it when Toussaint and Ka-sen forget about me in favor of Nei-sen. I know Ka-sen doesn't do it intentionally, but I have the feeling Toussaint does it for some unknown reason, Naruto said, making Hiruzen narrow his eyes. The real Naruto, from what I've been told from the letters, is beginning to be just as cold as Tousama when he gets back. He will probably be even colder when the emotions transfer to him, Kami, but I know it's for the best, Hiruzen thought as he was planning to honor his Tousama's last wish. Is there another reason, Naruto-kun? The aged shinobi asked. You know there are a number of civilians there, and the civilian council, Naruto responded sadly. If Hiruzen was any less adept at keeping his emotions in check like a proper shinobi, then he would have went ballistic. Damn you, Minato! Why did you have to tell the council anything 2 years ago? Damn you! Naruto is not a scapegoat, damn it! He shouted internally. Well, aren't Mikoto-san, Tsum-san, Sasuko-chan, Shisui-kun, and Isen-san there as well? What about Kiba-kun and Hana-chan? Hiruzen asked, making Naruto's eyes brighten a little bit. I think I'll go, Aji-san, Naruto smiled slightly. I'll go get Biwako-chan, and we will escort you, the aged man smiled. Naruto smiled and hugged his Aji-san before getting up to go get on a fresh pair of clothes he had brought with him earlier. Biwako Sarutobi, Hiruzen, and Naruto were each walking towards the Namikaze estate, each of the villagers metaphorically being turned to ash each time they sneered at the young Uzumaki or glared at him, though Biwako was doing most of the work with that fiery and overprotective gaze of hers. Did you and Hiruzen-kun have fun training today, Naruto-kun? Biwako asked with a small smile. Naruto's eyes gleamed. Yeah, Oba-san. I learned a new jutsu today too. Maybe I can show you tomorrow? He smiled, making her chuckle. Why don't you spend tomorrow with your family? She asked softly, making him deflate somewhat. I guess, Oba-san, he said with a soft smile, making her heart harden towards Minato even more. The boy should love his family more than he does. You can show me the day after, she smiled as they walked, making him smile back. It took another 10 minutes to get to the Namikaze estate. It was large, but nowhere near as large as the Hyuga district or abandoned Uchiha district, the main family and Shisui opting to live in a single house on the other side of Konoha. Naruto reached for the door handle hesitantly, though Biwako beat him to it. He turned around to see her with a sad smile on her face. She then opened the second of the 2 doors to reveal birthday decorations, a large cake on a white table. There was confetti everywhere on the ground and furniture. There were also many people there. The remaining Uchiha, main family of the Inuzuka clan, as well as Choza with his son and wife, Shikaku, his wife Yoshino, and Shikamaru, and Oichi, his wife and daughter. Suddenly a voice called out, Naruto and I. A small voice said, making Naruto turn his gaze to see his little sister in a pink kimono with her hair up in a ponytail ending at her shoulders. Hey, Kimiko-chan, he smiled as she enveloped him in a hug. Naruto hesitantly returned the hug, making Kimiko smile. Naruto wasn't around much, not for dinners, not for family night, not when Minato and Kushina would pick the two up from the academy. He'd just be gone. She didn't know why, but Naruto just had the underlying feeling he wasn't wanted around the home, not with his father home anyway. He knew Kushina was unintentionally giving Kimiko more attention, and every time he used to ask her to train him, she'd agree. But Minato would quickly sway her into training Kimiko, seeing as how she had both of her elements and the Kyuubi's chakra, by trying to smooth out her emotions to not get angry quickly. She didn't know about it at the time, and she still didn't know about it. Many of the nearby civilian council sneered at the Kyuubi brat, Naruto, hugging the Hokage's daughter. They knew he was the Hokage's son, but that didn't make it to where they liked him anymore. They saw his as the Kyuubi and nothing more, but he was knowledgeable as to why the villagers hated him, but every time he tried to meditate nothing happened, but he didn't know why. He'd have to figure that out for himself eventually. Hiruzen and Biwako smiled at the two siblings before glaring the sharpest of daggers at Hamura and Koharu. Not a moment later, Kushina came into the hallway to see the two siblings smiling at each other. Naruto-kun! Kushina shouted happily as she knelt down to hug the dirty blonde-haired boy. She, like her daughter, was wearing a pink kimono with white floral designs and her hair up in a ponytail. Hey, Ka-san, he said slowly as he wrapped his arms around her hesitantly. Two-san should be in here to interrupt any moment now. Where have you been all day, Naruto-kun? She asked worriedly. I was training with Hiruzen-sama, he responded, making her take on another worried expression. Why didn't you ask to train with us? She asked with a raised eyebrow. That question made Hiruzen narrow his eyes at the woman. He shouldn't have to ask, Kushina, he thought dangerously. Before Naruto could respond, Minato came around the corner with a pleasant smile on his face and 2 glasses of wine in hand. Hey, Kushina-chan, we're about to blow out the candles for Kimiko-chan. Oh, hey, Naruto-kun, he said, though both Biwako and Hiruzen caught a glint in the current Hokage's eyes as he looked at Kushina. He looks quite possessive when he looks at Kushina, they thought in unison before looking at each other. Hey, Two-san, I was training with Hiruzen-sama today and dash. Minato cut his son off. That's great, Naruto-kun, but we have to blow out the candles now, he said before walking off to the large cake with Kushina in tow. Naruto looked hurt as he watched his 2 parents walk towards the cake. Kimiko looked sad as well as she followed them while looking at her older brother by 2 minutes. Every person at the party gathered around Kushina, Minato, and Kimiko, some searching for Naruto, i.e. the Uchihas and Inuzukas. Minato-kun, what about Naruto? Shoo, Kushina, we have to sing happy birthday for Kimiko-chan. Minato smiled back to her. Before Kushina could respond, Minato and the rest of the party started to sing. When the singing was over, Kushina was about to speak up to Minato before he told her to go get a camera for when Kimiko blew out the candles. Biwako and Hiruzen shared a look with each other. He leaned in closer to her. It's like he's controlling her, the aged Hokage whispered. Biwako had to nod in agreement. Mikoto, Sum, Shursui, and the former two's respective children were thinking along the same path. Why isn't Naruto/Naruto-kun not blowing out the candles too? They thought as they shifted their gaze towards Naruto by the Sandaime and his wife. When Kushina returned with the camera, she spoke. Minato-kun, what about Narudash? Come on, Kushina-chan, get ready to take the picture, he smiled politely. She wanted to protest but kept it in as she saw a happy-looking Minato and took the picture of the visibly sad Kimiko blowing out the candles. Naruto fought back tears that never came while people started talking again. 4 puffs of smoke appeared, signifying a shunshin had been performed by 2 separate people. The smoke cleared for people to see none other than Jiraiya of the Sannin, a 20-year-old Kakashi Hatake, 15-year-old Kurenai Yuhi, and Anko Mitarashi. Uncle Jiraiya! Kakashi and I! Kurenai ne and Anko ne! Kimiko exclaimed, overjoyed they would come, her previous sadness gone. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Jiraiya smiled while Kimiko hugged him. Meanwhile, Kakashi, Anko, and Kurenai raised an eyebrow each as they put 2 and 2 together. Kimiko had just blown out the candles and Naruto was nowhere in sight. Kakashi had actually brought a gift for the boy this year. Well, he got Kimiko and Naruto the same thing for gifts, but he had just got it that day, so it was last minute. Anko and Kurenai each were worried about Naruto. They left the main building just after greeting Kimiko and their sensei, Kushina, to go look for Naruto. Where's Naruto? Kakashi asked Kushina and Minato, of which the latter was oblivious to the boy's absence while the former scanned the crowd and gasped. Naruto truly was nowhere to be seen. He was usually with the Sandaime and his wife, but when he looked in their direction, Biwako was silently crying and the Sandaime had a sad look on his face. Kushina was about to go look for Naruto when Minato called her over to discuss something with her. She relented while the present Uchiha family and Inuzuka family left in search for Naruto. Why? Why don't they notice me? Am I not good enough? Why does Toussaint do that? Does he hate me? Why? Why? Naruto cried on top of the roof of the guest house building nearby. Naruto sniffled as he wrapped his arms around his legs and stared at the moon. At least when Tusan passes on the clan head status from himself to me like he and Kasan promised, maybe he'll notice me, Naruto tried to rationalize as he wiped the tears. He sat there for a few minutes, simply thinking in the October air. Why are you crying, Naruto? The little boy turned to see a standing Shursui with a kind smile on his face. Shursui had charcoal eyes signature to the remainder of the Uchiha clan, round face, and curly yet spiky black hair. Naruto knew he was once an ANBU, only resigning from the captain position 3 years ago just after his 15th birthday. As Shursui and I? Naruto sniffled, making Shursui smile again. You got it. Shursui smiled as he ruffled Naruto's hair, making the blonde glare slightly. So why were you crying again? Shursui asked as he sat down next to Naruto. Naruto was silent as Shursui put an arm around his neck in a brotherly-like fashion. Come on, Otoro, you can tell me anything. Shursui smiled again, making Naruto's eyes brighten. Well, I just have the feeling Tusan is ignoring me, and every time Kasan tried to speak up, Tusan would just ask her a question or ask for her to do something. It really hurts me. Shursui and I know they used to train Kimiko-chan in favor of me so that she could use C-chakra chains like Kasan, but now I think Tusan is doing it purposely and Kasan is oblivious to it, he explained as he felt Shursui tighten his grip on Naruto slightly as to protect him from something. Do you know why Tusan is doing this, Shursui and I? Naruto asked. Shursui shook his head after a moment. I don't know why, Naruto, but it has to be for a good reason. I don't know what, but it's got to be pretty good, Shursui said, making Naruto's eyes brighten again. He's right, Naruto-kun. Your father must have a good reason, Kurenai said from behind Naruto, making the boy's eyes go wide as he turned to see Anko and Kurenai, each in their usual provocative uniforms. Kurenai-chan, Anko-chan, Naruto said happily as he hugged the two blushing women. Meanwhile, Shursui sweat dropped. The kid's gotta be bipolar or something, he chuckled internally. Hey, Naruto-kun, Anko smiled, making Naruto blush slightly. When I get to be clan head, I'll get Tusan to acknowledge me. Naruto beamed, making the two Chunin and Jonin smile. Shursui picked up Naruto before the three jumped off the guest house roof to be face to face with a happy Mikoto, impassive Isane, angry Sasuke, angry Hana, relieved Kiba, and ecstatic Sim. Naruto-kun/Naruto. They exclaimed before Mikoto and Sim hugging his to death between their respective bosoms, making Naruto turn beet red, and for the present girls, save Isane as she simply chuckled, to giggle at him. We were worried sick about you, Naruto-kun. The 28-year-old Mikoto Uchiha said angrily. We were looking everywhere for you, Naruto-kun. Some added, and making the kids, save Isane, to start yelling at him for running out of his own birthday like a meanie. I'm sorry, Sim-chan, Mikoto-chan, I just had to think about something, he said as he cast Shursui, Kurenai, and Anko knowing glances. Well, tell someone when you're gonna leave like that, Naruto/Naruto and I. Kiba and Hana exclaimed, making Naruto nod at the duo. You're inconsiderate of what people think about you, Naruto-kun. We care about you, Isane chimed, making Naruto blush. What Isane said? Sasuke said, making Naruto smile at her, making a blush appear on the 8-year-old's cheeks. You're not big enough to go out by yourself, Naruto-kun. What if those mean villagers would be out here? Mikoto said, making Naruto pout. When I get big and when I'm clan head someday, I'll show 'em who's boss. Naruto exclaimed, making the women giggle, save Isane as she just smirked, and for Shursui to shake his head. They all knew that ever since the Namikaze clan was instated thanks to Minato's swift release, Naruto wanted to be clan head, as was customary for every first son of the clan head. Naruto wanted nothing more than to be a good clan head for their future Uzumaki Namikaze clan, though their conjunction hadn't gone into effect yet. Hell, even Kimiko and Kushina knew that it was his biggest dream. Let's get back to the party, any? We haven't give you our gifts yet, Naruto, Shursui said, making Naruto nod at him with a smile. They re-entered the main house to find Kushina and Kimiko to run over and hug Naruto before bonking him on the head independently. Tell someone when you're going out, Naruto-kun/and I. They exclaimed, though no one at the party paid them any mind. Okay, Kimiko-chan, Kasan, he responded, making them hug him again. Minato appeared at Kushina's and Kimiko's side a moment later. Kimiko-chan, Kushina-chan, I have something I want to tell everyone, he smiled at them. Alright, I'll just bring Naruto-kun along dash. Kushina started. Come on, Kushina-chan, time's a-wastin'. He smiled at her, making her nod reluctantly. Naruto was visibly saddened but brightened up when Shursui put a hand on his shoulder. Minato stood in front of the whole party with Kimiko and Kushina on either side of him. If I could have your attention, everyone, Minato started with a smile on his face. Everyone quieted down, then Minato started again. As all of you know, when I noticed I had the swift release, some of my less favorable on the civilian council wanted to put me under CRA, and I declined in a heartbeat, he said, making Kushina's heart flutter and for some to go awe at the words. Since the Namikaze clan has been instated, it has wanted to join to the Uzumaki clan, he smiled at Kushina, and I would like to announce that I have made my decision for Kimiko Uzumaki Namikaze to be the clan heir for the future conjunction of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans, he smiled while Kushina, Kakashi, Anko, Kurenai, and Kimiko each went wide-eyed. The less knowledgeable of the gathered crowd clapped for Kimiko except for Biwako, Hiruzen, the Uchiha family and Inuzuka family, as well as for those groups to lock their eyes onto Naruto. Naruto didn't move, he didn't breathe for what felt like eternity, though in reality it was only a minute. A very, very long minute. Shursui was gripping Naruto's shoulder so hard there would definitely be a bruise. Naruto's breathing started to accelerate as well as for his heartbeat to rise. He was visibly starting to hyperventilate as he then bolted for the door, making many yell after him. No one saw the tomo spinning in the eyes of the crying boy as he ran. Present, Naruto hid from the entire village for 2 years in the Forest of Death. Sum was sending Inuzuka tracking teams every day after him, as well as for the entire Uchiha family to look for him. Enko, Kurenai, and Kakashi would each look for him as well. Biwako would cry daily and Hiruzen would look also. The Sandaime was the best sensor type in Konoha, and with all the chakra-enhanced bugs and animals as well as the chakra-blocking trees. After 1 month of constantly bawling her eyes out, Kushina would look with Kimiko. When Kushina would get back from a mission, she would resume looking until she was about to pass out from chakra exhaustion, and even then it was only Kimiko that dragged her back, saying they would look the next day. The shrubbery located all around the Forest of Death gave off distinct smells that screwed with Inuzuka trackers. Minato, however, did not a damn thing. 6 months after Naruto's disappearance, Kushina came to her senses after reviewing what had started since Naruto was 5. She then promptly halted the conjunction of the Uzumaki and Namake's clans, and the divorced Minato 1 month later, taking half of his money, half of their belongings, Kimiko herself, and all Uzumaki-related things in the home including Fuinjutsu, though Minato had already reviewed most. And they moved to the opposite side of Konoha into a simple 2-story home next to the Uchihas, though the latter's was a little larger than theirs, but that was only because more people had to live there, and Minato couldn't say a damn thing because the newly proclaimed Uzumaki clan was under the Uchiha clan protection along with Inuzuka, so Minato couldn't touch them. And Kushina still didn't know why Minato would do that, but she would figure it out one day. When Naruto returned, he was much, much colder. He never referred to anyone with chan, ne, and I or Quin. He simply referred to them with their last name or first name with san depending on his mood. The only people he showed remote affection to were the Sarutobis. Naruto was angry at Kushina because she wouldn't speak up, and angry asked Kimiko for not speaking out against Minato. He suffered because of their gutlessness, and they both accepted that. They simply wanted their brother and son back. Back to more pressing matters, Naruto entered the classroom clothed in black shinobi pants, black boot-like sandals, black gloves, and a long-sleeved shirt with the sleeves rolled up to about mid-forearm. He also had a tanto strapped to his back thanks to Shursui giving it to him when he returned. Naruto's physical appearance was the most handsome face that any woman, even Kimiko herself, would say he was downright gorgeous. Naruto didn't get his looks from his father. Kimiko actually didn't know where he got his looks, while Kimiko got her looks from her father, spiky hair, and mother, roundish face. Naruto also had long, black hair with streaks of black in it that ended at his lower back. "Naruto, you're late again," Iruka said to the blonde, slightly irritated at him for constantly being late. But yet the boy always slept in class, was late, but he was Rookie of the Year and has excellent grades. "I am sorry, Yumino-sensei. I was up late last night training." "My apologies." Naruto bowed slightly to the instructor. "All right, Naruto Uzumaki Namake's is here dash." He paused as he looked into the furious eyes of Naruto. "All right, just Naruto," he said as he put down his clipboard after marking Naruto's name from absent to tardy. Naruto sat in the very top of the room with his tanto on his desk and with his arms crossed. There was also no one in the desk beside him. He leaned back and fell into the land of dreams 2 minutes later, but no one noticed. Iruka did, but didn't antagonize the genius because he knew no matter how much Naruto slept, he would make near-perfect scores on the next test. Sasuke, Kiba, Hana, and Kimiko averted their eyes from Iruka to Naruto, and they all frowned. "Where did the old Naruto go? Why are near Kiri, brother?" Naruto asked the slightly older Uchiha standing in front of him, simply gazing at the clouds. "Maybe because we can." Black Zetsu retorted sarcastically with a smirk, while Naruto remained unfazed and impassive. The 4 of them were currently near Kirigakure, in a training ground to be more precise. They were in a clearing with a path adjacent to them that most likely led to the village. "I think Naruto-sama is trying to be sentimental. These could be his last friendly moments with his brother," White Zetsu said, making Black Zetsu roll his yellow eyes. "Do you remember those times after I unlocked my Mangekyo that I would leave Kamui for a certain amount of time and come back?" Obito asked, making Naruto nod. "Their Mizukage is the 3 tails, and I have been controlling him to exterminate anyone with a bloodline for 7 years. I am merely going back to my job." "You? Why, you are trespassing," Obito chuckled, as well as Naruto. The 2 brothers simply stared at each other before Naruto uncrossed one of his arms and offered a hand to Obito. "I wish you good luck," Naruto said neutrally, "and I hope you don't die until we can face off," Obito chuckled. Naruto cracked a smirk as Obito shook his hand. Naruto unfurled the other hand before turning around and walking off. "Today, Nisan, we are friends, but after today, we are enemies. Good luck and may the best sibling win," Naruto spoke as he disappeared in the trees with White Zetsu following close behind. Obito stood there before turning around and said some words to no one in particular. Foolish little brother Aji-sama wanted you to win. Naruto jumped from tree to tree with White Zetsu following close behind. The two were currently jumping over a swamp with the trees being over 50 yards high. One misstep and one would plummet to the quicksand under the water below. It was daytime, hot, humid, and misty, the exact opposite of how Naruto liked the weather. He liked it cool, nighttime, and clear weather. He enjoyed the occasional drizzle of rain now and then, but too much, and it got annoying. It didn't interfere with his daily life as it just became a bother after so much of it. Naruto also enjoyed nighttime strolls when he wasn't in the Kamui dimension training, as the night usually led to his most interesting encounters. The encounters weren't always sexual, it just seemed that the night was when the world was truly alive. Whether it was how singular people acted or how the world acted in general. It just seemed to be awake at night, ironically. He never really understood what appealed to him about the night. Was it the stars? Was it the moon? He didn't really know. He figured it was the vastness of the expanse of space that appealed to him. The freedom and mystery the night could hold. People were often afraid of the night because of what they couldn't see, what they couldn't expect, what they couldn't observe from afar and then react to. It was sort of like him in a way. One glance and he was a 15-year-old in crimson armor. Another, and he would be holding his sickle to your throat. Just that alone, the pure predictableness of how people would react to him appearing on the battlefield was something that could mean their deaths. Naruto did, however, have to cut them some slack that not all 15-year-olds held the kind of power he had. And he would have more when he received the memories from the blood clone. A possible 15 years of knowledge from the professor himself excited Naruto somewhat. Naruto was curious as to how his clone grew up with a mother, father, sister, and had already made plans to not interact with anyone when he got to Konoha. He would simply go to where his grandfather specified, which was to go to the Sarutobi compound, and meet with Arisen. It could possibly lead to consequences if it was discovered by anyone other than the Sandaime that there were two Narutos, and it would mean big trouble for his plan. Naruto then thought about Konoha, the place where he would undoubtedly be spending most of his time for the foreseeable future. He reeled in disgust at the place. Learning about Konoha from someone else's point of view, and you tend to just shake your head in shame at the place. Naruto could tell his grandfather's views were biased, but he could tell it was also 90% truth. Why on earth would one give away tailed beasts? To appease other villages? Ludicrous. Hashirama could have easily built an empire being in control of them, but he just had to be on somewhat of a level playing field with the other villages. The first Hokage truly was stupid. The second Hokage abandoned the place of his other clan's birth, Uzushiogakure. Konoha's views on trust, friendship, and allies must have been very, very distorted during Tobirama's reign. The third hadn't made too many mistakes other than being a spineless ruler, though Naruto knew Tobirama's rule gave the civilians more power than they should have had. Naruto would make his views on the fourth Hokage, his father, when he got to Konoha, though for some reason, the young Uchiha could tell they would be bad. Naruto and Zetsu continued to jump from branch to branch until the two saw a path with solid land on the opposite side of the swamp. From their position high in the trees, they could also see the ocean. Surely there was a dock nearby. If not, he would simply water walk to the mainland. Huh, so you really did know where you were going, Naruto-sama, Zetsu chuckled as the two landed on the path. The path seemed stable for it being so close to a swamp, so the two decided to start walking, Naruto extending his senses to try and feel for any other chakra signatures. Zetsu, Naruto spoke as the two walked before crossing his arms, the plant being snapping his gaze towards his master. Yes, Naruto-sama? Zetsu responded submissively. I want for you to scout ahead and find Tsunade Senju. She will be the one to transplant the eyes, Naruto spoke, making Zetsu take on a questioning expression. Why would she do that, Naruto-sama? If she sees the Sharingan, then surely she will refuse. She might have encountered your blood clone in Konoha and know who you are, Zetsu explained his worries. From what I have learned, the Senju has a gambling addiction coupled with a very large debt. I will simply pay her, and she will accept, or her debt will continue to rise. And it is unlikely that she has met my blood clone. She hasn't been in Konoha for 12 years and she has not had the best relations with the current Hokage, Naruto responded, making Zetsu smile. Brilliant as ever, Naruto-sama, White Zetsu responded with a nod. I will flare my chakra once a day so you will know where I am. And hurry. I wish to transplant them as soon as possible, Naruto spoke, making Zetsu nod immediately. The plant like being merged with the ground a moment later, and then he was gone. After a moment Naruto spoke. Suck up, he muttered as he closed his eyes and kept walking along the path. After a moment of walking, Naruto's senses picked up a large amount of signatures. At least 20 of them possessed the same type of chakra, while there was another pair that had unique signatures. Naruto grew curious as it seemed that the 20 or so similar chakra signatures held malice for the other two. The two unique ones had large chakra reserves, one being very, very large at Hokage while the other had elite A and BU reserves. The 20 and smaller reserves seemed to be clashing against the larger reserved. Naruto opened his eyes only to speed off in the direction of where the battle was ensuing. He merely wanted to observe the battle. When Naruto arrived, he saw a field with many dead bodies littering it, kunai, shuriken, and other ninja tools littering it. The grass seemed fairly wet, so it was safe to assume that many water techniques were used recently. He looked further up the clearing to see the 20 chakra signatures surrounding what he guessed were the 2 larger reserved. He jumped to the upper part of the clearing to a tall tree to overlook them. There were at least 20 Kiri and Bu surrounding 2 women who looked a little worse for wear. One was tall, towering at least 6 feet 3 inches, light blue skin, blue lips, and gill-like slits under her amber eyes. She had a cute nose, long, semi-wavy, navy blue hair that reached right under her shoulders with bangs curving to their right on her forehead, and another bang covering her left temple that reached the top of her cheekbone. She had a great complexion with a nice hourglass figure. Her bust was at least a DD cup with a black, skin-tight shirt covering it reaching above her belly button. She also wore skin-tight blue shinobi pants that hugged her hips. Her last article of clothing consisted of a pair of blue sandals. In her hands she had a large sword with a golden hilt with a skull at the pommel. The sword itself was covered mostly in bandages with the last quarter of it showing reaching the top. The non-covered bandages showed blue, scale-like appendages on the sword. The other woman had long, wavy, auburn hair that covered her right eye and reached her lower back along with a set of hazel eyes, fair-colored skin, blue painted lips, cute nose, and a top bun. She had a modest stature of 5 feet 8 inches with a D-cup breast size. She wore a long-sleeved, dark blue dress that fell just below the knees. It seemed to be closed at the front with a zip, and was kept open on the front right side from the waist down. The dress only covered up to the upper part of her arms and the underside of her breasts. Underneath that she wore a mesh armor that covered slightly more of her upper body than her dress. She also wore shorts in the same color as her dress and, underneath those, fishnet leggings reaching down over her knees. Around her waist she wore a belt with a pouch attached to the back on the left along with lavender-colored high-heeled sandals and shin guards reaching up over her knees, and blue nail polish on her fingernails and toenails. Naruto grew curious as to why these 20 Anbu were trying so desperately to undoubtedly kill these 2 women. Naruto then went to a realization to what his brother said hours before. So these 2 must have a bloodline. Interesting, he thought as he grew curious as to what the women possessed as a bloodline. Yotan, Yokai no Jutsu. Lava release, melting apparition technique, the auburn-haired woman shouted as she blew lava in the air that traveled down onto a couple unsuspecting Anbu, instantly incinerating them. Before 3 more Anbu leaped at her with their tantos drawn. She flipped in the air just as one nipped her hair, making a few strands fly off. The blue-skinned woman swung her giant zanbato, large sword, towards another set of Anbu, shredding them thanks to the saw-like properties of the sword. The blue-skinned woman jumped back as several kunai flew her way and they impacted the ground. Sway-tun, Gasho Kazame. Water release. 5 feeding sharks, she called out as she placed her hand on an exceptionally large puddle of water most likely created by previous water-based attacks. Not a moment later 5 sharks materialized out of the water and barreled to the closest target and started to encircle him. Screams were heard as he was immediately shredded by the brute yet effective jutsu. The auburn-haired woman sent out another stream of lava as 4 more Anbu rushed her. Die, bloodline scum! One shouted as he phased out of existence, with a puff of smoke signifying he disappeared in a shunshin. The woman's lava impacted 2 Anbu, effectively decommissioning them, while the third jumped out of the way before launching a Fuma shuriken at her. She ducked under the chunk of metal before delivering a devastating kick to an Anbu in the leg, snapping it before she shoved a kunai she had in her pouch through the bottom of his chin. She smirked in victory just as the other Anbu that was left earlier jumped out of a nearby tree with Nodachi in hand, bringing it in a downward motion on top of her. She looked up and her eyes widened before spewing lava in her hand and letting it harden. Naruto looked on the scene as an obsidian sword came into existence. She brought the sword up to defend herself, effectively parrying the Nodachi-wielding Anbu. The Anbu jumped back just as the woman swung her sword to his side. Another 2 Anbu sprang to action and appeared right in front of her, both flying through hand seals before slamming their hand on the puddle they were in. Suetun, Suryuden no Jutsu, water release, water dragon jutsu, they yelled in sync just as large water dragons came to life out of the water. They were considerably smaller because of the amount of water, but they were still towering over her at 1.5 stories. Her eyes widened as she had no time to react. The water dragons crashed their way into her at breakneck speed, sending her flying into the air before impacting the ground. May! The blue-skinned woman shouted before she growled and impacted another Anbu with her zanbato, effectively ending his life. She slammed her hands on another puddle as more sharks formed, shredding yet another Anbu before 3 on the Kiri-nin phased in front of her with their tanto drawn. She growled in annoyance just as one Anbu jumped on her back. She huffed as she simply fell back onto him, breaking ribs. She flipped up just as the remaining 9 Anbu encircled her. They each drew Simban and flung them at her, hitting joints, making her temporarily paralyzed. Shit, she muttered as she felt her body go numb. She dropped her large sword. Bloodline scum, one muttered as he dragged the blue-skinned woman by the hair to where the now tied-up Mei was located. I thought it was going to be more entertaining than that, Naruto muttered as he continued to watch, his arms crossed. He then closed his eyes and sighed as he heard a click behind him, signifying he had been found, though he had been leaking out chakra purposely. Now what do we have here? The single ANBU muttered behind his mask. Naruto didn't respond as he phased behind the ANBU, a small amount of blood dripping from the sickle now in his hand. What we have is your death, Naruto responded quietly as the head of the ANBU dropped to the ground along with the body. The 8 remaining ANBU encircled the 2 tied-up women too with their tanto drawn ready to decapitate the women. Well, Kisame-chan, it looks like we're in a bit of a jam here, Mei smiled weakly to her childhood friend. Looks like it, Mei-chan? Kisame grinned, revealing her shark-like teeth. Any last words, bloodline scum? One ANBU said to the 2 kneeling women. We've been talking for the last 10 seconds. You're not too bright, are ya? Kisame spit on his mask. You wretch. I'll have to take 10 baths just to get your bloodline filth off of me. He yelled at her before slapping her across the face. Don't you touch her. Mei yelled while her chakra suppression seal burned on her back, signifying she was trying to use chakra at the moment. And what are you going to do about it, whore? The other ANBU said. Mei growled just as an ANBU making up the circle outside them yelled out something. Taicho, Captain. One of ours just fell out of a tree headless. The ANBU yelled, making the captain's eyes widen. Someone else is here. Get prepared. He yelled just as a sickle with a chain attached to it appeared next to his neck. One slight jerking motion later, and he was kneeling and his head was on the ground. Wah dash! Another yelled out just as a chakra disruption blade found itself in his heart. He looked down at it before raising his hands to try and remove it. Blood gurgled out of his mask before he fell to the ground, dead. Where is he? I can't sense him. One yelled as the other 5 ANBUs scanned the area as well. What they got was a chuckle in return. They each turned around as well as the 2 prisoners to see a handsome blonde man dressed in crimson armor with sickle in hand and gunbai in the other. The gunbai was black in color with 2 sets of 3 red tomo on both sections of it. It also had a black chain extending from it to in the blonde man's sleeve. You killed Taicho. One yelled as he charged the blonde man. Naruto merely shifted his gaze to the right of him to see the ANBU charging him. He rolled his eyes as the tanto the ANBU had phased through him. The ANBU looked at his hands and sword to not see any blood. How dash, he was cut off as a sickle embedded itself in his back. Pitiful, Naruto spoke. ANBU are weak just as expected. The remaining 5 ANBU looked at each other before 3 phased out of existence with puffs of smoke in their wake. Suiton, Suryuden no Jutsu, Naruto heard 2 voice yell behind him to see 2 one-story and half-tall water dragons rocketing towards him. Naruto turned on heel before swinging his gunbai at the 2 water dragons, repelling them both, thus turning them into large quantities of water. The ANBU went wide-eyed as Naruto shifted his gaze to the other 2 ANBU behind him. He swung sickle, the chain lengths extending as it got further away from him. The 2 ANBU that were charging him stopped to defend but went wide-eyed at what happened next. Naruto jerked the sickle back slightly, making it fly over the 2 hostages' heads and then behind him to decapitate one of the ANBU that had launched the water dragon at him, making the other gasp. Naruto looked up and left before swinging his fan, making a large gust of air be produced before it flew at a singular ANBU with a nodachi in hand, making him fly backward. The 2 ANBU behind Naruto jumped in the air before hailing a multitude of kunai and shuriken at him. Naruto raised his fan above his head, blocking all of them. The ANBU above landed on either side of Naruto before Naruto ducked with his fan still above him. A slight twitch of his left wrist and it was over for the 2 ANBU as Naruto's sickle reeled back and bisecting one ANBU before the other was kicked in the air by Naruto. Naruto's chain wrapped around the length of the ANBU with the sickle ending at his head, effectively decapitating him. Naruto flicked his wrist towards himself, making the chain unwrap around the body. Naruto caught the sickle in his hand with it dripping even more blood than before. Naruto looked at the 2 tied-up women before putting his gunbai on his back. Though he did throw his sickle behind him to a nearby tree. All 3 could hear it cut through flesh. A second later, after the sickle retracted, the legs and torso fell from the tree with a nodachi clinking to the ground as well. So weak, Naruto muttered as he put the sickle on his hip. He waked over to where the fallen Zanbato was before picking it up. He noticed that the scales seemed to retract a bit further toward the sword. He walked calm over to where the 2 shell-shocked women were still tied up. He thought something as he looked at the sword. I want one, he thought with an internal chuckle. Naruto planted the sword on the ground before going behind the 2 women silently before untying them. Thank you, Mei said slowly as she rubbed her wrists before gazing up at the handsome blonde man. Naruto remained silent as he untied Kisame's bindings. Yeah, thanks I guess, Kisame said as she stood up before plucking Sanban out of her joints. Naruto's stature of 5 feet 9 inches seemed kind of small compared to this woman's. She walked over to her precious Samahata and put a hand on it before retracting back slightly. She then looked at the blonde man starting to walk away. His chakra is so dark, she thought as chills ran up and down her spine. Wait! Mei called out, making the blonde man stop. Can we at least know your name? She asked. My name is none of your concern, Naruto replied. Aren't you just a ray of sunshine? Kisame said, making Naruto roll his eyes before resuming to walk. Damn it, wait! Mei said as she grabbed onto his sleeve. Before she could even register it, Naruto had his sickle at her throat. Don't touch me, he said simply while she just looked him wide-eyed. Kisame tensed as she looked at him. Naruto retracted his sickle before crossing his arms. What do you want? He asked. I want you to train us. She blurted out, making his raise an eyebrow and for Kisame to drop her jaw. You can't be serious, Mei-chan, she yelled. Naruto ignored the 21-year-old blue-haired woman before looking directly at the 20-year-old Mei. Why would I want to train you? Because you're strong. You took care of those A and B like it was nothing, she responded adamantly. If I'm strong then that makes you weak, Naruto responded, hoping to dissuade her. She was getting very annoying and he was on a schedule. Hey, asshole, shut up dash, Kisame started but was cut off. Yes, we're weak. But we want to be strong, so can you please train us? She asked pleadingly. Kisame looked at Mei with wide eyes. Naruto looked at her for a moment before asking her another question. What would you do with the strength I could give you? He asked her. We would come back here and help fight with the bloodline rebels, she responded immediately. She was very firm in her belief that it was her duty to help the other bloodline rebels fight to overthrow the current Mizukage. Come here, Naruto said impassively as he looked at Kisame with a lazy, half-lidded gaze. She tched before situating Samahata on her back. She then walked over to Naruto and Mei before crossing her arms. Why do you fight for those that have bloodlines? He asked both of them. Because the Mizukage hates bloodlines and we have bloodlines. That's why, Kisame said with an even gaze. After a moment Naruto spoke. Is that all? He said, making their eyes widen. What's that supposed to mean? It was Mei's turn to make an outburst. What I mean, is that all? Here's an example. Did he kill your family, did his troops? They shook their heads no. Did he rape you personally or did his troops? Again no. Did he steal from you? No. Did he do anything aside from try to kill you? Nope. Then what are your reasons? He asked. What do you mean reason? His troops tried to kill us, Kisame shouted, and people tried to kill me a majority of the time. It doesn't mean I tried to fight them just because I feel like I have a duty to, Naruto said as he closed his eyes. Kisame and Mei stood in silence for a few minutes. Then where will we go? Mei asked quietly as she looked at the ground. Kisame surprisingly remained silent. Anywhere in the elemental nations, Kumo, as they have a love for bloodlines, Suna as they would love a lava bloodline. Be mercenaries, prostitutes for all I care, Naruto responded coldly as he was quickly becoming annoyed. Mei and Kisame rolled their eyes at the last comment as they seemed to pick up on the man in front of him being naturally cold. Mei perked up as she thought of something. Does anywhere mean we can come with you? She asked, making Naruto glare at her. He sighed as he turned around and began to walk. He might as well humor them as the one with auburn hair did not seem to want to give up any time soon. I have one requirement, which is be quiet, he said, making Kisame fake salute at him. You got it, boss, she said with a toothy grin, making him grunt in annoyance. So what's your name, boss? Mei giggled as she caught up with Naruto with her blue-skinned companion not far behind. Naruto, he said simply as he dusted off his clothes before crossing his arms. So, Naruto-kun, what do you like to do? Mei asked politely. Naruto remained silent. Looks like our sensei is a real charmer, Kisame muttered dryly with a small smirk, making Naruto sigh again. Why are you here again? Kushina stated coldly as she and Minato stood outside the academy. The latter was wearing his usual attire while she was wearing a pair of black shinobi pants with blue sandals, red shinobi long-sleeve shirt, and a katana at her hip with her forehead protector being around her bicep. Minato looked at her out of the corner of his eye and then averted his gaze back to the academy main entrance. I'm here to greet our daughter, he responded evenly. And what about our son? Kushina said as she glared at Minato outright. He's no longer our son, remember? He stopped being mine 10 years ago and yours at 7, Minato explained to her, not bothering to meet her gaze. Now he's basically the Sandame's second son, he added, making a pang of pain go through her heart. Why do you hate him so much? What did he do to you? Kushina almost yelled. Minato looked at her right in the eye. He stole something from me, he responded. Kushina looked confused as to what Naruto could have possibly stolen from her ex-husband. Before she could say anything, a voice called out, Ka-chan, Tu-san. Kimiko called out as Minato turned to her and smiled. Hey, Kimiko-chan. Minato smiled to her as he picked her up in a hug with a friendly smile on his face. Tu-san, how have you been? She asked as she was put down. Just busy with work and all, he chuckled with a smile. You're still coming over this weekend, right? We can work on the Rasengan some more then. He smiled at her, making her nod repeatedly. Of course, Tu-san. She smiled. A moment later, a cat-masked ANBU landed next to the three in a kneeling position. Hokage-sama, the Kazekage is here to discuss the technicalities of the Chunin exams. He requests your presence immediately, the ANBU said in a distinct feminine voice. All right, I'll see you this weekend then, Kimiko-chan. He smiled to her before leaving in a yellow flash. Even after the divorce, Kimiko tried to act as a bridge between her mother and father. She knew that they would never get back together, but she loved them both and couldn't be without both of them in her life, them and Naruto. Kushina rolled her eyes in an annoyed manner. It was always like Minato to show off. Hey, Ka-chan, can I go with Hana-chan, Ino-chan, Hinata-chan, and Sasuko-chan to a kimchi barbecue? I got the money, so, is that alright? She asked with a beaming smile. Of course, Kimiko-chan, but I've got a question for you, Kushina said to her daughter, making Kimiko snap her full attention to her mother. How's Naruto-kun been doing in class? she asked timidly. The same as always, Ka-chan, she responds dejectedly. He's always late for class with the same excuse that he was training and slept in. When he gets there, he goes back to sleep only to wake up during tests, and then makes nearly perfect grades on them. When we go outside to train as a class, he stands there with his eyes closed. When it's his turn, he dominates who he gets paired with. He got paired with Sasuko-chan a couple weeks ago and knocked her out not 5 seconds later with one hit. Then that at least means he didn't want to hurt her, Kushina deduced, making Kimiko nod. That's what me, Sasuko-chan and Hana-chan thought, too, Kimiko responded. Kushina smiled at her daughter before kissing her on the forehead. Try to get through to him, okay? Kushina smiled, making Kimiko nod immediately. I try every day, she smiled. Kimiko-chan, your mom say it's alright? Ino shouted from about 20 feet away from Kimiko, making the young Uzumaki look over to her blonde friend before smiling and nodding. Kimiko saw Hana, Sasuko, and Hinata with Ino. I'll see you tonight, Ka-chan. Kimiko called out as she ran over to catch up with her friends. Kushina smiled at Kimiko as her gaze traveled over to Academy, seeing all the children piling out with their parents waiting for them. You're looking for Naruto-kun, aren't you? A voice said behind Kushina for her to turn around and see Tsum and Mikoto standing there, the latter with a sad smile on her face and the former with her arms crossed and sad expression. Tsum wore her usual jonin attire, which consisted of her jonin flak jacket, black long-sleeve shirt with the Uzumaki swirl on both of the arms and sleeves rolled up to mid-forearm. She also wore black, slightly baggy shinobi pants with tape going from her ankle to mid-shin. She also wore blue shinobi sandals. Mikoto wore black, skin-tight shinobi pants with black sandals and navy blue long-sleeve skin-tight shirt with a katana on her right hip. She and Kushina were the top partners in Konoha, so they decided to dress the part, Kushina wearing red and Mikoto blue. Yeah, I guess I am, Kushina chuckled with a sheepish smile on her face. Did you kids say anything about Naruto when you asked? She asked. What did Kimiko-chan say? Tsum asked as she wanted to compare what Kiba and Hana said first. She said that he comes to class late every other day with the excuse that he was training late and overslept. He sleeps during class and only wakes up for tests and to go outside for some exercises. When they spar, he demolishes his opponents, Kushina said, making Mikoto chuckle at the last part. Sasuko-chan's been pushing herself every day after that, she said, making the three women chuckle. That's basically what Kiba and Hana said, Tsum responded. Same with Sasuko, Mikoto muttered. The three were silent before Tsum's sharp eyesight caught a window opening on the side of the academy before seeing Naruto jump out of it onto a nearby branch. Why'd he jump out of the window? Tsum asked herself, thought Mikoto and Kushina caught it. What do you mean? They asked in tandem. Naruto, he just jumped out of the window and then into the forest, Tsum responded as she jumped to a nearby tree just outside the window with Kushina and Mikoto following. Their eyes widened as they saw one of the academy teachers, Suzum, bared out on her desk, her hair a mess, glasses off, pants off and shirt to either side exposing her breasts. It was obvious that she had just had sex as Tsum could smell the musk. She was clearly panting and one could see her snatch with neatly trimmed black hair above it with semen leaking from it. Kushina, Mikoto and Tsum were each blushing madly as it was obvious Naruto had just had sex with one of his teachers. That hussy. I should get a lawyer on her ass for defiling a child, my child. Kushina sputtered in outrage. As much as I would love for you to do that, Kushina, you can't do that. Neither you nor Minato are his guardians anymore, and Sandame-sama would just give Naruto a pat on the wrist if we took this to him. Only he can press charges, and once he sees that Naruto consented, he won't punish him, Mikoto said as she averted her eyes from the scene. Kushina sighed as it was true. Only the clan heads and the Hokage knew about Naruto's secret induction into the Sarutobi clan after he returned from the Forest of Death. As much as she and Minato wanted to argue, Hiruzen would ruin their reputations by charges of child neglect if they didn't let him be inducted. The part about the threat was behind closed doors, of course, but Mikoto and Tsum knew, but they didn't blame Kushina. I just hope he's being safe in all this, Kushina muttered as Tsum patted her on the back. It's alright, Kushina-chan, and hey, maybe I'll try him out one day, she cackled with a wink, making Kushina sputter. He's obviously good at it if he can make a woman look like that, she said as they looked at the exhausted and panting Suzum. Kushina grumbled as she blushed at the thought of Naruto making Tsum howl and moan his name. Naruto was very handsome and he looked to be good in bed. Desk ack, bad Kushina. She scolded herself in the end. While you two are conversing on Kushina's child sex life, I'm going to try and find Naruto. Mikoto rolled her eyes as she jumped to another tree in the direction Naruto was heading. Tsum cackled while Kushina huffed before they followed Mikoto also, with Naruto. Naruto sighed as he thought of his evasion and stealth skills. They obviously needed work if he didn't see his birth mother and her friends there. He picked them up as soon as he entered the woods by the academy. He sat on a hill with one leg hanging from it, and the other one brought up and cupped around his arms, knee at his chin, simply thinking. This was his favorite place to think, as it was the only place aside from the Hokage monuments that peered over the village walls. He often thought about the day's events or how hollow he felt inside. It was like he was missing something. He couldn't think of anything he was missing. He didn't desire a relationship with a woman. He didn't desire acceptance. He didn't desire anything. He knew it wasn't his hormones, as he kept them sated with sex. He was content with what he had, which was a mother or grandmother figure, a father or grandfather figure, a sibling and friend he found in Asuma. He didn't want to rekindle his old relationship with his friends and blood family. Did he desire to be stronger? Of course, but he knew that wasn't it. He was snatched from his thoughts as his ear twitched as he heard a rustling behind him. He didn't look behind him because he knew it was his birth mother, Tsum, and Mikoto. "How may I help you today, Uzumaki-san, Inuzuka-san, and Uchiha-san?" Naruto asked casually as he let his other leg hang off the cliff before putting his arms behind him to support him. He had long laid his tanto beside him so it wouldn't be awkward sitting down. Kushina visibly flinched as she heard him call her Uzumaki-san. Mikoto rubbed her back soothingly as the three of them came into full view to see Naruto with his long mane of hair swaying with the wind atop the large hill. Tsum and Mikoto were faring no better as they heard him say that to them. They inwardly smiled as they remembered the boy who called them Mikoto-chan and Tsum-chan. Now it was replaced with someone with a much colder heart. "How was your day at school, Naruto-kun?" Kushina smiled shyly as she gazed at the back of his head. Naruto didn't respond. "I hope it was good. Kimiko-chan and I are doing well at home." She just finished her second pathway on Uzumaki Kenjutsu Dash. She stopped immediately as she saw Naruto turn his head to where his left eye was visible and looking at her directly. She remembered when Naruto asked her when he was 7 to train with Kimiko in Kenjutsu, but Minato had quickly averted her that the stress relief aspect of training with your sword could also help even out emotions. Mikoto and Tsum saw how Naruto reacted when Kushina mentioned the Kenjutsu and frowned as they remembered Naruto talking to them about that particular event. After a minute, Kushina decides to speak again. "Naruto-kun, we know what you did earlier to the teacher," she said, hoping to draw out at least some emotion from him. "Yes, and?" he asked her as he continued to gaze out over the forest below. "It's wrong and you shouldn't be having sex at your age," Kushina berated him, making him chuckle. "Now you want to become my mother?" he responded evenly, making her eyes widen. "I was your mother," Kushina yelled back as her eyes began to water. Yes, a mother who put the needs of her daughter and happiness of her now ex-husband in front of her son. A mother who was too much of a coward to stand up for said son, Naruto responded to her. Mikoto and Tsum wanted to protest, but Naruto seemed to have prepared for this moment with facts so they couldn't argue. Kushina cried silently as both Tsum and Mikoto put comforting hands on her shoulders. Naruto then spoke up as he stood up before crossing his arms to look at the late afternoon sun. "Does Kimiko-san know?" Naruto asked her, though all three older women rose an eyebrow. "Know what, Naruto-kun?" she asked as she wiped her eyes. About the QB sealed inside her gut, he asked her as he turned on heel to see each of them wide-eyed. "I meditate daily and not once have I found a shred of the QB's existence. I've meditated so much that I've even developed a mindscape to where I can access all of my memories. I've read Mito-sama's notes on how she visited the QB during its imprisonment inside of her. And I have also traveled my mindscape and have not found the Nine Tails. It seems my father," he spat out the word like it was acid, "wanted a scapegoat so Kimiko-san could live a peaceful life," he finished. "Naruto-kun, you're not going to tell the villagers, are you?" Mikoto asked the blonde-haired boy, no man, in front of her. He had proved to her that he more than worthy of that title earlier. Tsum merely watched him to see if any of the old Naruto was still in there. The one that she adored. Naruto looked at her before walking past her, his arms still crossed as he walked. He stopped just as the trees and shrubbery began. "No, I won't. I refuse to let her live the life I did, and it's not like any villager would believe the QB brat anyways," he said as he walked forward again. "Oh, and Uchiha-san," he said to Mikoto, making her look at the man. "Yes, Naruto-kun?" She responded to him as she looked at the back of his head. "Please tell your oldest daughter to stop spying on me when I train. It gets rather annoying to hide so many things from her," he said to making her go wide-eyed. "An academy student sensing an ex-NBU? That was never heard of. And Uzumaki-san, I am not stupid. I preform an anti-impregnation jutsu after every time I have sex," he told her before he disappeared in a smokeless shunshin. A moment later Kushina fell to the ground weeping as both Mikoto and Tsum knelt down beside her. "Damn you, Minato, damn you! This is all your fault!" she yelled as she slammed her fists on the ground repeatedly. With Kimiko and Ko, the five of them had just walked into a kimchi barbecue, and were immediately met with a friendly waiter. He was obviously not an akimichi as he lacked the sufficient mass to equate one to their clan status, but each of the friends knew that Choza, the owner and current head of a Kimichi clan, hired non-akimichi so other clan members could carry out more tasks throughout their clan. "And how may I help you, Hyuga-sama, Namikaze-sama, and Uchiha-sama?" the waiter asked with a friendly smile. He was an average-looking man with a shaved head, apron on, white button-up and khaki slacks with black dress shoes. Hana and Ino rolled their eyes at how they weren't addressed but waved it off. "Ah yes, seats for 5 please?" Kimiko asked while the waiter immediately nodded before getting 5 menus. He then led the 5 women to a booth with a window. The waiter left only to be replaced with a good-looking woman. She looked to be in her early 20s. She had black hair tied in a ponytail, black apron on, white t-shirt, and blue jean pants. She wore a pair of black tennis shoes and also sported a $1 million smile. "What may I get you girls?" she asked with a smile as she pulled out a notepad and pen. Soda, Ino responded. Soda, Kimiko said. Water, Hinata chimed. Soda, Sasuko said. Water. Hana voiced her option. Alright, I'll be back in just a minute, she smiled as she flipped down her notepad. So what do you guys want to talk about? Hana said as she intertwined her fingers and put her elbows on the table. How about boys? Ino said with a grin, making Hinata eep. Alright then, which boy, Ino-chan? Kimiko grinned just as the waitress returned with their drinks before scurrying off to tend to other customers. How about your hottie of a brother, Kimiko-chan? Ino grinned again while Hana, Sasuko, and Kimiko herself did a spit take. Hinata just eeped again as she sunk into the seat. What? Kimiko asked with a blush. Oh come on, you know your brother's hot, Ino grinned. Hana-chan, you think he's hot, right? Ino asked the blushing Inuzuka. Hee, she does have me there, Kimiko-chan, Hana said sheepishly. What about you, Hinata-chan? Ino asked the heiress. He is very attractive, Kimiko-chan, she said to Kimiko. Sasuko-chan? Ino chimed. Oh of course and not. She declined adamantly with a blush. I'll take that as a yes. So, Kimiko-chan, do you think your brother's hot? She asked the red-haired Kunoichi. Kimiko blushed crimson and looked at her friends before sinking her seat only for the blush to intensify. Yes, he's pretty hot, I guess, she responded to the Yamanaka heiress. I knew it. You have a crush on your brother. Ino laughed heartedly. Kimiko grumbled as her face threatened to turn into a tomato. Speaking of hot brothers, there he is now, Ino said as she saw Naruto enter the restaurant before sitting in a booth by himself just as the waitress from earlier walked up to him. She flipped open her notepad before writing something in it. She then ripped it off and put it right in front of Naruto. They saw him smirk. Meet me at that address at 9, Kimiko heard the waitress say to him before she resumed her normal job of taking orders. What did you guys think she said to him? Ino asked as she looked at Naruto looking at the menu. Kimiko felt a bit of jealousy rise up in the pit of her stomach as she remembered the waitress. She slipped him a piece of paper with her address on it and said to meet her there at 9. Kimiko responded as she gained a frown and put her elbow on the table. Wow, what a whore, Sasuko muttered as she watched Naruto out of the corner of her eye. Tell me about it, Kimiko responded as she traced her finger on the top of the glass she had. So then let's follow him then, Hana said, making Ino cackle and for Sasuko, Kimiko, and Hinata to sputter. Great. We'll go to the Sarutobi residence and wait for him there before following him, Hana grinned. With Naruto, he had just pocketed the paper before ordering water to drink. He was frustrated and normally didn't go to the women's houses when they invited him, but he'd go. He had a bit left in his and Suzume surprisingly didn't satisfy him. She and he both knew that it was just a casual thing, but neither really cared. He was very aware of Kimiko and her friends whispering about him, but he didn't care. He had slept with a number of women, unknown to him just like his real self, including the Nara clan's head's wife, Yoshino, a few civilians, and a couple kunoichi here and there. Naruto really didn't go to them, they came to him. Yoshino explained to him that her husband hadn't been meeting her needs lately, and explained that it was just a one, maybe two-time thing, and now they met every other week. A male waiter came back this time to take his food order. He ordered their special, which consisted of a barbecue ribs with a salad on the side. Naruto closed his eyes but opened them as he sensed the Lokage chakra source enter the establishment. He opened them to see none other than Isane Uchiha making her way over to his booth. She now wore a black, loose, long-sleeve V-neck shirt with a fishnet mesh underneath it. The V-neck did show her large and very ample cleavage sitting at low D cups. She had tape going from her wrists up to her mid-forearm and black fingerless gloves on. She also wore a pair of somewhat baggy black pants with tape going from ankle to mid-shin. For shoes she wore a pair of black shinobi sandals and often painted her toenails and fingernails black. At her hips sat a katana with a golden hilt guard, black sheath, and red hilt. If she were to draw it, it would have been completely hollow along the length of it with silver blade. She had a beautiful complexion with charcoal eyes, long black hair that fell to just below her shoulder blades, and her beautiful heart-shaped face. Her Konoha forehead protector was situated round her neck. May I have a seat? She asked as she stood in front of his booth. She looked at him with his fingers intertwined and elbows on the table, his chin resting on his fingers. He looked more aged than he should have been, in the mental sense, and somewhat in the physical sense given his height and body build. You may, Uchiha-san, he said, not even looking at her when he spoke. He simply gazed out the window as she sat there with her katana now resting in her lap and one hand cupping the other on the table. How may I help you today? He asked her plainly, still not looking at her. I know you have the Sharingan, she told him, hoping to get at least a reaction out of him. She didn't even get a batted eyelash. And I know you have the Mangekyo, he responded to her, making her once neutral eyes widen slightly. I do some spying of my own. You need to work on your sensing skills or I'm just getting that good, he told her impassively as he continued to look out the window. When did you get the Sharingan? She asked him after a while. The night when I disappeared, he told her. Yes, the emotional trauma would have caused that. Does your family have any Uchiha relatives? She asked him. That was the first thing I did when I got back from the Forest of Death. Minato was given up at an orphanage at the age of 1, so it is likely either my paternal grandmother or grandfather was an Uchiha, and then he or she sealed his Sharingan. Kushina is out of the question as her listed relatives go back generations, he quickly deduced. He is quite the genius, as I came to the same conclusion, Isen thought. She looked at Naruto. Are you going to tell anyone? He asked her. No, I am not. Would it bother you if I did? Isen responded, hoping to get a glimpse of emotion other than impassiveness. It would be quite annoying to have questions and for Sasuke-san to bother me, seeing as how mine if fully matured. My father would probably do blood work and compare it to an Uchiha's. They would likely see similarities and he would deduce that his mother or father sealed his Sharingan, and would work to remove the seals, Naruto said as peered into the surprised eyes of Isen. He truly is a genius, she trailed off. If that is all, my meal is here, he told her, making her nod her head. Good day, Naruto-kun, she said as he spared her a glance before he began to eat. She sighed internally as she walked out of the restaurant. With Kimiko. Why was your sister over there, Sasuke-chan? Ino asked the eating Uchiha. She talks to Naruto every now and then, so it isn't strange. You have any idea what they were talking about, Kimiko-chan? She looked pretty serious, Sasuke asked the eating redhead. Kimiko shook her head, no, making Sasuke suck her teeth in annoyance. It's not our business to know anyways, Kimiko said innocently while Hana, Ino, and Sasuke gave her deadpan expressions. Why, you did listen in on him when the waitress was talking to him, Kimiko-chan, Hinata told her, making her whistle innocently. Aha! Kimiko-chan's jealous. Ino cackled, making Kimiko spit her food onto Sasuke. The former gained a sheepish expression as the latter's eye twitched. Hana howled in laughter while Ino cackled madly, with Hinata giggling slightly. Hee, sorry? Kimiko said as she rubbed the back of her head. One day later. Ugh, are we there yet? Kisame complained as she, Naruto, Mei, and the newly arrived White Setsu walked along the path. Yeah, are we there yet? Mei pouted. Does the goddamn map say we're there yet? No. Now shut up. White Setsu shouted as Kisame and Mei gained sheepish expressions. Setsu looked back at the close-eyed and cross-armed Naruto before chuckling sheepishly. Sorry, Naruto-sama, he chuckled. I guess they don't know how far away Yudikura is, he said. Naruto merely spared him a glance before closing his eyes. He then looked back at the smiling and laughing Kisame and Mei. He sighed internally. It was going to be a long walk. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose as he listened to Mei and Kisame's banter. It was about 6 or so, and it had been about 1 day and 8 hours since they had been with him. He had learned quite a bit about them, even if he hadn't said a word. As in, Mei was the type of person who was flirty, but her actions and what she said told him that she was afraid of being hurt and refused to truly open her heart to anyone. What Naruto heard, Mei often talked about sex, but again, the way she talked, the way she spoke about sex, he could easily tell she was one of the unknowledgeable virgins out there. She also liked roses, to eat sweets, and have a picnic on a hillside. Whenever he talked to Obito about relationships, Obito never really gave him a straight answer about it, but always told him to never listen unless you want to fuck them, and then be gone the next day. To Naruto, that was all he knew about relationships. Well, aside from books, shitty books he might add, so he wasn't totally clueless. What he learned about Kisame was that she put up a tough facade, but she seemed to be vulnerable on the inside. It seemed that Kisame had been abused as a child. How did Naruto know that? When Mei talked about her father and how awesome he was, Naruto noticed that Kisame seemed to freeze up and look at the ground for a while. It was just an assumption, but then again, he really didn't care because it wasn't his business. When Mei brought up the subject of sex, Kisame acted like she was all big and bad, saying she fucked a guy unconscious. Naruto figured that she beat a guy unconscious after he more than likely tried to rape her. It was all in the tone of voice and subtle movements. A twitch, a change in posture, a change in the pace of speech, it was all there. Having been trained in the art of true lying by his grandfather, and emotional decay on his part, Naruto knew it all. What is true lying, one may ask? It was being trained in not giving away a single tick. Not a change in the pace of heart, not starting to sweat, not tapping your finger, not batting an eyelash, not getting jumpy, nothing. If Naruto were to ever be interrogated, the interrogators would have a tough time getting any info from him, and would have a tougher time trying to ascertain it being true or false, and an even tougher time capturing him in the first place. Suffice to say, he had an awesome poker face. Naruto glanced over to Zetsu, who was chatting away with a clone of his. They were having a conversation about how if they got a hold of the Shodaime Hokage's DNA, that they could perfect their Mokuton and be able to make more clones faster than their current pace. Naruto rolled his eyes at that as Zetsu's conversation was restricted to his own knowledge. It was humorous, really. He chuckled lightly at it, though only Zetsu caught it. The plant-like being blinked before he looked at the clone beside him, and then back to Naruto. Zetsu's sweat dropped slightly as the other clone suddenly dropped dead before dissipating into the ground and then turning into a tree sapling. Idiot, Naruto breathed as he pinched the bridge of his nose with a slight grin. Mei and Kisame saw the grin and both ceased talking. At first the thought he was a robot capable of no emotion of that impassiveness, but the thought went out the window as they saw the curl in his lips. So he does have some emotion in there. Kisame grinned slightly. Mei simply sighed dreamily. Even for being a total ass, he was the most handsome one. And speaking of asses, she had been checking his out for a while. Though as soon as Naruto's grin appeared it vanished behind a cold, hard visage with his cerulean blue eyes losing their shine. They became dull and devoid of any emotion as he continued onward, his companions not far behind. So, Boss-kun, what are we gonna learn if you're actually going to teach us anything? Kisame asked as she put her hands behind her head. Naruto peered at her out of the corner of his eyes before averting them forward. You are going to learn chakra control for starters, he responded. Kisame raised an eyebrow. My chakra control is fine. Why not some more water jutsu? Samahata felt that you had that affinity, so why not start there? She asked him. Any jutsu is useless if you put too much chakra into it. And your chakra control is not fine, it is mid-chunin at best. You will exhaust yourself easily and will be vulnerable to attack, he responded. You probably have not noticed because of your abnormally high reserves, but it does put a significant drain on you, he added. Terumi-san, you have low jonin control, but you need to widen your area of techniques. You rely too much on your yotan release. Tell me, what are the two components that make up the yotan, lava, kekai, genkai? Naruto asked her. Fire and earth, she responded. Then you need to learn techniques in those branches as well. Use those on your enemy first, and then catch them off guard with the lava, he explained calmly. Her eyes widened. I never thought of that, she said slowly. I also have the Futten Boil, Kekai Genkai. Should I learn water techniques as well? She asked him. She got a curt nod in return. And do you know any fire, earth, or water techniques, Boss-kun? Kisame asked with a toothy grin. Naruto looked at her as he walked for a moment before extending a hand in Zetsu's direction. The plant-like being quickly caught on to what he was wanting and reached into his gut, which was actually a portal to the Kamui dimension. His clones lacked the portal, so it was only unique to him. Kisame and Mei went wide-eyed as he pulled out 3 pieces of paper. Naruto took the piece of paper before he stopped walking. He turned to them before handing them each a piece of paper. This is known as chakra paper. By channeling your chakra into the paper, it will tell you your elemental affinities and possible advanced affinities you have. I will demonstrate, he said as he channeled his chakra into the paper. The paper split into 5 parts. One part immediately burst into blue fire, signifying his extremely strong affinity for fire. Another turned into dust. The next became soaked, signifying his strong affinity for water. The next simply fell to the ground before turning into a sapling of a pine tree. The last burned with unholy black flames. As you can see, the blue flames signified I have a strong fire affinity. The one that turned into dust is my earth affinity. The one that became wet is water. The sapling shows the Mokuton, wood Kekai Genkai, a strong affinity for it at that, and the last shows my Enten, blaze Kekai Genkai, he explained. Blaze release? What's that? Mei asked him while Kisame was gaping at him that he had the Mokuton Kekai Genkai. The blaze release is bestowed upon those who have an extremely, and abnormally, high fire affinity. They can also control fire to a high degree. He stopped speaking as he snapped his fingers, making a flame ignite on his index finger. He held it there on his gloved finger before it dissipated. Now, as I did, channel your chakra into the paper. They both nodded and Naruto watched Mei's results first. Mei did what was told and like Naruto, hers cut into 5 pieces. The first caught fire, the second became damp, the third crumbled into dust, the fourth turned black and into obsidian, while the last simply evaporated into steam. Kisame channeled her chakra and got interesting results. The paper sliced into 3 pieces. The first turned straight into water, signifying her extreme affinity for water. The second crinkled and sparked several times, signifying her high affinity for lightning. The last turned black before it turned into a literal bolt of black lightning. So you have the Ranton, storm, release and a unique branch of it as well. Most interesting, Zetsu spoke curiously. Do you have any unique jutsu for your storm release? Naruto asked her with a raised eyebrow. She shook her head. I can only make a few bolts, but they're not lethal. They can paralyze a person for a few seconds, but that's about it, she explained sadly. Not a moment later Naruto threw her 2 scrolls. One is a B-rank lightning jutsu while the other is a C-rank water jutsu. If I am to be your sensei, then I will not allow you to be weak, he said with a glare. He then reached into his satchel and tossed 2 more scrolls to Mei. One is a B-rank water jutsu while the other is a C-rank fire jutsu. You two must reach at least mid-jonin in chakra control before you attempt to perform your B-rank jutsu. I have no doubt you will be able to do it, but this is my requirement, he told them with another glare. They simply looked at each other before back at him with small smiles and a nod. Zetsu, scout ahead a few miles to find an adequate area for a campsite, Naruto spoke as he turned around. Zetsu nodded his head immediately. Of course, Naruto-sama, he said as he merged with the ground. Naruto turned around as Mei and Kisame opened the scrolls before Mei walked up close behind him to plant a kiss on his cheek. Thank you, Naruto-kun or Sensei-kun, she purred. Naruto raised an eyebrow before rolling his eyes. I've gotta say, Boss-kun, this is the most you've ever spoken the time we've known you, Kisame spoke with a slight grin. What brought it up? Naruto didn't respond. That's more familiar, Mei giggled. That night, it was around 8 p.m. when Naruto, Mei, and Kisame stopped walking through the forest. They had just exited Wave Country, and Naruto was glad for that. The mist was irritating and the negative feeling was everywhere in the country. It seemed that Gato was still in control. Naruto thought without a care in the world. It was their problem, not his. Mei and Kisame were gone to a nearby spring to bathe themselves, and he had started up a fire with a flick of the finger and some kindling. He had taken off his armor, so he was clad in gloves, pants, sandals, and long-sleeve high-collar shirt. He sealed his armor away in the blood seals placed along his body. He actually had a number of seals on his body. 2 seals were engraved on the sides of his torso that stored his gunbai and sickle, chains and all. They were engraved so that they would not fade and so that he would never be defenseless. The upper part of his forearm had numerous chakra disruption blades so he could surprise his opponents. His grandfather had taught his that chakra disruption blades were made of solid chakra, so as long as he had chakra, he could make the blades. That was the seal's secondary jobs, were to make said blades. On his left bicep he had a seal that stored 2 other sets of armor, and at least a dozen sets of clothes. On his right bicep were food preservation seals so that he would not have to scavenge for food whilst in the forest, along with a few tents and other survival gear. He was always over-prepared for any situation. He was no master at Fuinjutsu, but he wasn't a simply novice either. He was level 4 perhaps, but he never stayed on the subject after learning how to make chakra disruption blades. He stared at the fire. It was possibly another day's walk to Yugakure, and he had to send Zetsu out soon to make sure Tsunade was still there. He didn't want to get there, and the woman be gone. The plant-like being was currently patrolling the area with his clones, though he gave him explicit instructions to go nowhere near the spring Kisame and Mei were at. Zetsu had his uses, building an army for one, the second being a great spy, and third not needing sleep to be used as the night watch. He was no use to Naruto dead, and from what Naruto had learned from Mei's and Kisame's chatter that day was that they hated perverts. Naruto's gaze traveled over to the satchel close to one of the tents he had set up. It would be as good of a time as any to see the summoning contract Aji-sama left me, he thought. He sat up and walked over to his satchel and opened it, and pulled out a scroll, a large one at that. He looked at it, and saw a blood seal on it. He removed his left glove before adding some chakra to his index fingernail, and swiping it across his thumb. A small, shallow cut opened to reveal intricate lines bordering a circle with a single kanji within. The kanji read Kaijin or Colossus. Naruto's eyes went so wide they threatened to pop out of his head. That was before an uncharacteristic grin broke out across his face. He read across the scroll and snorted at one part. This required mid-Kage level reserves to even summon a boss summon. Thanks to the augment the Kyuubi's chakra provided, his already high Kage reserves multiplied more than a few times. He could probably chop down the chakra usage to at least A and BU level thanks to his chakra control. He continued to inspect the scroll and noticed that it was actually a reverse summoning scroll. Of course, the Kaijin are too large to be used outside of battle. Their subordinates wouldn't be, but that's unimportant. It would probably take Kisame and Mei an hour to get cleaned up, seeing as how they had left only a few minutes prior. He dug his fingernail into his thumb deeper this time and began to write his name on the scroll. Naruto Uchiha was written where it was designated, and he then gathered blood in palm and rubbed it across his fingers. He then pressed the entirety of his left hand onto the scroll below his signed name, and watched it glow a moment before turning into black ink. A second later he vanished in a plume of smoke. Naruto reappeared in a court-like room. Around him were monumental beings. The first seemed to be made of pure fire and brimstone. It looked to be even taller than the Kyuubi, if only by a few stories. His arms were made of jagged, mountain pieces pointing downward with lava spewing out of them. He had a long tail with centipede-like legs which served as his way of transportation. They were also made of fire and brimstone with lava as well. His chest cavity was open but held no organs save for more lava and fire as well as jagged pieces of rock. He had no pupils in his eye sockets, simply more fire. This was the primary Fire Colossus boss summon. Link on profile. The second was slightly smaller than the last. It had an open maw with many rows of jagged teeth. Its eyes glowed an ethereal blue and had many tentacles. It seemed to be sitting in an ocean all its own. The tentacles had their own maws with their own teeth. For its back it seemed to have an extremely large bluish shell, but one couldn't call it that. This was the primary Water Colossus boss summon. Link on profile. The next was a scorpion-like creature except with 2 pincers on each arm. It had 3. It had a sandy brown color to it. And it had 3 separate maws except one. Its stinger had several spines lining length of it. This was the primary Earth Colossus boss summon. Link on profile. The fourth was a large creature which looked like a mix between a bat and dragon. It had large, very large, leathery wings, 4 arms with the 2 at its shoulder being larger than the 2 at its abdomen. It had beady red eyes and horns on its head pointing forward. It had purple fur and 4 legs with jagged scales. This was the primary Wind Colossus boss summon. Link on profile. The last was a large, griffin-like beast. It had 3 heads with 4 horns pointing back, 2 on its scalp and 2 below that. Each head sported a beak of 4 glowing blue eyes. At the base of the neck it sported 2 tendrils. On each head it sported a glowing purple jewel. This was the primary Lighting Colossus boss summon. Link on profile. 3 spaces seemed to be empty, but Naruto paid it no mind. These creatures were powerful. He could tell that they could easily outmatch the Sanbai, and it looked like if they worked together, possibly all 9 Bijou. Naruto was snatched from his thoughts as the Fire Colossus spoke. It has been some time since anyone has been summoned here, it spoke in a booming voice. Why yes, Sajin-sama, but tell me, who does this child look like? The 3-headed griffin spoke, its voices changing in pitch each time they spoke. It looked like each of the boss summon's eyes widened slightly before settling. You, boy, are the second since creation to have attempted to sign this contract. The Wind Colossus spoke as its wings stretched themselves before settling back into place. Naruto merely kept silent as the 5 colossi looked at him. Geisho, you know I hated our first summoner. He was so uptight and I never got summoned. The Water Colossus spoke in a watery voice while referencing the Wind Colossus. Who was your first summoner, Geisho-san? Naruto asked them casually. I suggest you treat us with respect, boy. The Earth Colossus spoke, its stinger getting ready to strike. We will ask you questions, not the other way around. Respect is given, not earned. I have only had respect for 2 beings in this world as of now, Naruto retorted as he looked at the Earth Colossus with his arms crossed. Oh, I like this one. He possesses such a fire for someone so young, the Griffin spoke. He has guts to stand up to you, Bishu, the Colossus added, making the scorpion-like Colossus hiss. Our first summoner, and only summoner, was the Sage of the 6 Paths. Many believed it was the dragons or phoenixes, but they held nothing against the Jubi. Who else do you think held down the beast while the Rikudo Sannin sealed it? Sajin spoke. So, what you're saying is that you are the ultimate summons? Naruto asked. Without a summoner, we have grown weak in our time of peace here on Kaidana Yama, Colossal Mountain, Sajin explained. Do not get us wrong, child, we are still foes to be reckoned with. Even the first few Bijou fear us, but we are shadows of our former selves, Sajin continued. Naruto nodded. Is there anything I may call you? I have already deduced the Fire Colossus is named Sajin, he said, getting a nod from the Fire Colossus. The Wind Colossus is named Geisho, and the Earth Colossus is named Bishu. What are your names, Lightning-san, Water-san? Naruto asked as he looked at them. You may call us Raijin, Naruto-san, the Griffin spoke, making Naruto nod. My name is Narai, Naruto-san, the Water Colossus spoke. Naruto nodded his head in greeting. Oh, such politeness for someone so young, it truly is entertaining. Geisho spoke with a grin showing off its many teeth. Shouldn't we wait for Tyson, Keshin, and Saimai to get here? They would want to meet our potential new summoner. Narai spoke with its watery voice. They do not care for such trivial things. As the Colossus of War, Tyson would accept any summoner. As the Colossus of Death, Keshin wouldn't care as long as he got to collect a few souls. As the Colossus of Life, Saimai would argue but accepted eventually. Sajin spoke, making the others nod their heads, or whatever they could nod, in agreement. So, Sajin-sama, are we going to issue the test? Narai spoke in its watery voice, making the Fire Colossus nod. Your test, Naruto-san, is to stop my arm from flattening you to the ground. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Without the use of chakra, he finished, hoping to see a reaction from the young Uchiha. Bishu is our best sensor, so he will tell me if you even attempt to use chakra, the Fire Colossus added. Naruto looked on as the Fire Colossus stalked over from his position, only to stop about 100 feet away from his location. The Colossus drew his monumental arm back a fired away. Naruto merely watched as the appendage came in his direction. Stop his arm without chakra? I could easily stop it with Susanoo, but that would mean automatic fail. Naruto racked his brain for answers as he saw the arm not 50 feet from him. Naruto then spoke. Sajin-san, that is impossible, he said, making the Colossus halt suddenly. I lack raw physical strength to stop your arm. While I could apply chakra to my arm to augment it, and even attempt to stop your fist, it would still be using chakra. With that, I must resign from this test, Naruto said as he closed his eyes. What he got was a bellowing chuckle in return. Naruto opened his eyes to see that all 5 colossi were around him. They move fast, Naruto mused. Naruto Uchiha, Sajin began. You have been gifted with humility, Narai continued with its watery voice. We have been watching you. You have pride. A large amount of it. But you show humility to those you choose, your grandfather and your brother. Geisho spoke with its wings stretching again before settling. You have shown humility to us for blatantly telling us you cannot complete the challenge laid before you, and for that, you shall be rewarded, the Lighting Griffin. Raijin spoke with its many voices. Even for Colossus like us, we must show humility. Bishu spoke with its stinger rising before making its way towards Naruto's left arm. You are our second summoner and make us proud, Sajin spoke as Bishu's giant stinger struck Naruto's left arm lightly with only a slight prick. Naruto didn't flinch as he felt venom being put into his system. A moment later, Bishu's stinger retracted and Naruto rolled up his sleeve to see many intricate tattoos that covered his entire arm from shoulder to wrist. Many tattoos show only a single tattoo where ours shows many, signifying there are many, many types of Colossus. Not all are as large as us, but are Colossus nonetheless. You will be, however, expected sign another contract, Sajin spoke as the 5 boss Colossi made their way back to their previous positions surrounding Naruto. And why is that? Naruto asked as he continued to inspect the summoning tattoo. Go to profile for link. It's a tattoo sleeve, which means it goes all the way around the arm. We, the boss summons, should never, under any circumstances, be summoned outside of battle. Large-scale ones at that. Other summons, such as toads for example, can be summoned outside of battle for other uses. We have subordinates that you may summon outside of it, but they are quite large themselves, the smallest at least 2 stories. At any given time, you may only summon one boss colossus, but first you must meet a perquisite. Geisho spoke with a gleam in its eyes. And what might that perquisite be? Naruto asked as he rolled his sleeve back down to his mid-forearm before crossing his arms. Directly under us are secondary boss colossus summons. They were the previous boss colossus but were bested by us, the Griffin. Raijin spoke. You must defeat them in battle before you may summon us. You may summon 2 secondary boss summons, but if you do that, you may not summon us. As is the other way around, Bishu spoke, making Naruto nod. Say if he had only found 1 secondary boss summon, he would only be able to summon that secondary boss summon because he did not have another. The secondary boss summons are scattered throughout the elemental countries. We ourselves have no idea where they are, as they have been hiding for hundreds of years. If you defeat them in battle, they will return to the summoning realm to be summoned. However, say you were to defeat the former water colossus, I would be available, but the others would not be until you defeat their respective secondary bosses. Naruto spoke. The reason they have left is because they were kinda sore about losing to us and would rather die than listen to us. Even if you defeat them, they won't listen to us, only you alone, Geisho said with a grin. How will I know when they are near? Naruto asked. You will know. Trust me, Sajin spoke. As you were inspecting the summoning tattoo, I trust you saw the smaller tattoos, yes? He asked, making Naruto nod. Those are our subordinates while the larger tattoos are us, he continued. When you read the scroll, you notice that we require mid-Kage reserves to even be summoned, yes? Raijin spoke, making Naruto nod again. We actually continually feed off chakra even after the initial summon. While we are summoned, you are at an advantage, yet you are at a disadvantage. You will be unable to access a significant portion of your chakra, thus leaving you considerably weaker than before, it continued. However, if we are dispelled, 25 to 50% of the chakra that was given to us by you will be returned, Naruto said, making Naruto nod. However, sometimes none will be given back at all, Naruto added. Regardless, it would be foolish to not accept your proposal. The strengths outweigh the weaknesses in my opinion, Naruto spoke, making all 5 colossi look at each other before nodding. I don't think I can go back anyways, he said, gesturing to his new tattoo, making them chuckle. As we told you, be sure to try and sign another summoning contract, Sajin reiterated. Please, not the toads, slugs, or snakes. Or even the dragons or phoenixes. They're all too overrated, Geisho said, making a small chuckle escape Naruto. Now, as you were, Naruto-san, Sajin spoke as Naruto disappeared in a plume of smoke. Huh, that went well, Bishu said after a moment. Anyone else think that kid was actually kind of scary? Naruto spoke in its watery voice, making some colossi chuckle. Reminds me of when Madara tried to sign the contract, only the kid was bit less. Raijin trailed off if trying to find the right phrase. Of an ass? Geisho finished, making the lighting, earth, and water colossi snicker. Meanwhile, Sajin was thinking out loud. The toads foretold of their child of prophecy either destroying the world or bringing it peace. They are wrong, because our summoner will do either. He will ring this world up, turn it inside out, and then some before he's gone, which I believe will be a very, very long time from now, Sajin spoke. Doesn't that qualify as destruction? Bishu spoke, making Sajin chuckle. You do realize that the child of prophecy is the QB child, correct? Why are you referring to our new brat like he's the child of prophecy? Bishu asked Sajin. Naruto may not be the child of prophecy, but he will just make it to where the QB child is null and void, he explained with a grin. Well, if he could grin. Geisho looked at the contemplating colossi before shrugging. You guys do whatever. I haven't had my coffee yet, he said before leaving the room, the very ground shaking with each step. It's 8 at night. Why the fuck would you want coffee? Bishu shouted as his many legs scrambled after the bat-like being. You don't even have opposable thumbs. How can you hold the cup? They heard Bishu yell. You don't either, you overgrown bug. And it's called improvising. They heard Geisho yell. Ugh, children. Naruto shook her mane head, making Sajin and Raijin chuckle. I'm going out, Ji-chan, Ba-chan, Asuma and I. If Konoha Maru-kun stops by, tell him I said hello, Naruto said casually as he walked through the Sarutobi mansion towards the front door, passing Hiruzen and Biwako with Asuma trudging behind him with a pouting expression before the 25-year-old Sarutobi sat in a chair and grumbled about cheating blondes. Be back before midnight, Sochi, son, Biwako said as she sewed on a blanket, making Naruto respond with an alright. Naruto might have not been blood-related, but that didn't stop her from using the phrase. What your grandmother said, Hiruzen said while not even looking up from his newspaper, making Biwako shake her head at her husband. He was sitting in a chair while Biwako was sitting on the couch. They heard a door opening before closing, signifying that Naruto had left. All through knew what he doing when he left the house. While Biwako didn't agree with it, she wouldn't stop him as it improved his moods considerably. She would often, very often, scold him for being out late and tell him to use protection, and he listened to her intently every time. What are you pouting about now, Asuma-kun? Biwako asked her blood-related child. Ototo beat me in shogi again, he sulked as he buried his face inside his hands. Ah, truly a prodigy, Hiruzen said with a grin behind the newspaper. Dad, you're an asshole, Asuma said with a mock glare. Like father like son, Biwako muttered, making both Sarutobi males sweat drop. Uzumaki household. Kushina sighed as she looked at her daughter. Why do you feel the incessant need to stalk your brother at this time of night? She asked Kimiko as she lay on the couch while watching television. Because I've only seen the Naruto at school, not on his own free time. I want to know him better, Kimiko said. Kushina thought it over before grinning. She stood up before going to put on fresh outfit. Then I'm going with you, she told her daughter. Kimiko was shocked. Ka-chan, why? All of my friends are going. Why do you have to go? She yelled, making Kushina glare at her. I don't know about the Naruto aside from what you've told me. I want to learn more about him. How do you even know he's going out tonight anyways? Kushina asked her daughter. We overheard him talking to a waitress, and the waitress gave him her address and phone number, Kimiko said with a slight blush. Kushina grinned again as she left the living room. Pervert, spying on your own brother like that. I know what he's going to do, do you? She said, making Kimiko turn beet red before sputtering. KK-chan. Kimiko yelled while Kushina hollered with laughter. Inuzuka compound, clan head household. Why in the seven hells are you going to do something so stupid, Hana-chan? Some asked her daughter with her arms crossed. The two were standing in a hallway with several pictures lining the walls. Some were of Tsum, Kiba, and Hana, while some had pictures of Tsum and Kushina with Mikoto. And one was of her and Naruto a few weeks before he disappeared. Because I want to get to know Naruto and I better. Ever since he got back, I swear I haven't even gotten him to talk to me in more than 3 sentences. Maybe if I know him better he'll open up, Hana retorted, making some grin. So in order for you to get to know Naruto-kun better, you're going to stalk him to a random civilian woman's home, and then watch him have sex with her? Tsum explained with a grin. Hana blushed crimson and found the ground more interesting than her mother at the moment. I was hoping to see what kind of women Naruto-kun was into, she said quietly. Oh, what happened to Naruto and I? Tsum grinned again. Hana sputtered as her blush increased. Alright, fine, you can go, Tsum said as she cackled lightly. But on one condition, she added. What is it? Hana asked her mother as her blush receded. Tsum gained a toothy grin. I want to go with you, Uchiha household. Sasuke sighed for the umpteenth time as his mother stood over her. The two were in a kitchen with Mikoto having her arms crossed and Sasuke sitting at the kitchen table. You are not going out at this time, young lady, unless you tell me the reason, Mikoto told her youngest daughter. But Ka-chan, I tell you everything I'm going to do every time I go out, right down to the letter. Can you please trust me to go out this one time? Sasuke pleaded. It'd get embarrassing to explain that she was basically going to watch Naruto have sex with a civilian woman. Now, it's phrases like that that make you sound suspicious, Shursui said from the living room. He was watching television with a piece of Pocky in his mouth. Shut up, Shursui and I. Sasuke yelled with a slight stutter as a blush enveloped on her cheeks. So, are you going to tell me what you're going to go do, young lady? Mikoto said as she crossed her arms. Sasuke sighed in defeat before she mumbled something incoherent. What was that? Mikoto cupped her ear. Sasuke mumbled again. Still can't hear you, Mikoto grinned slightly. I'm going to spy on Naruto-kun while he goes over to this waitress' house. Sasuke yelled with a blush on her face while Shursui shot up from his position on the couch. Meanwhile, Mikoto blushed as she realized what Naruto would most likely be doing. Aisane wasn't there as she had taken a mission outside the village earlier that day. I wanna go, Shursui said in an almost pouting voice as he stood up to go get a fresh pair of clothes. You know what, fine. You can go, Mikoto said, making Sasuke's eyes brighten. Really? She said excitedly. Yep, but there's this one little thing, Mikoto trailed off. Which is, you gotta take me and Shursui with you. She said with a gleam in her eye as well as a peace sign being held up in her right hand, making Sasuke's eyes widen. Naruto sighed irritably as he walked through the streets of Konohagakure. Being a censor type, a surprisingly good one at that, he rolled his eyes at the pathetic attempt at stealth on the Hyuga and Yamanaka heiress parts. They were about 50 yards behind him on top of a building. The two were soon joined by the Inuzuka heiress, then the Uchiha heiress, and lastly the Uzumaki heiress. Naruto's senses extended further, and aside from the civilians he noticed that the Inuzuka matriarch, Uzumaki matriarch, and Uchiha matriarch along with Shursui Uchiha about 100 yards atop a 3-story tall building looking at him. Naruto inwardly snorted. If the previous 4 were caught by patrolling ANBU, they would be in trouble. It was illegal for regular ninja to stalk civilians. The heiress wouldn't be in that much trouble other than a fine, but the matriarchs and Shursui would. Hell, it used to be illegal to stalk ninja and civilians, but Orochimaru changed that. Naruto then grew curious as to why the matriarchs and Shursui were there. Naruto knew that the heiresses would be stalking him. It wasn't that difficult if one were to channel chakra to their ear. Naruto's thoughts reverted to the ninja stalking him. The matriarchs should have gotten a good enough look earlier that day back at the academy. Were they really that interested in his sex life? Naruto then put 2 and 2 to figure out that the Yamanaka and Hyuga heiresses didn't know the other 3's mothers were there. As Naruto walked through the night streets, he looked at the women swooning at him, winking at him, and blowing kisses at him. Naruto smirked lightly. He really needed to take more walks at night, and he also found some other ways to spend his evenings. The night always appealed to him. The stars did as well. Naruto always wondered what was in the vast expanse of space, and chuckled lightly. It was a hollow dream of his to get off this rock and travel. To find what was out there in the last frontier. But that's what it was, just a dream. Spin-off crossover maybe? Hee. That'd be a good thing to mess with. Tell what you guys would think about that. He had no interest in studying astronomy, but it was a favorite pastime to just look at the stars. He shook his head lightly as to rid himself of the thoughts. He pulled the piece of paper out of his pocket, and looked at the address again. He was close to his destination and his internal clock was drawing near to 9 p.m. so he really needed to zone in as to not pass the street he would need to go on. As he walked he could feel his followers jumping from building to building as he progressed down the street. He didn't like other people in his business unless he let them, unknowingly like his other self. He couldn't outright attack them because that would cause more trouble than it was worth, so he would just humor them. He found it slightly odd that his birth mother found such an interest in his sex life, but then again, was she desperate? From what he remembered, she was a very prideful woman, so she wouldn't just sleep with a man to quench her urges, so Naruto guessed that Minato was the only person, in her entire life, that she had ever slept with, and when they divorced her sex life was put on halt. He chuckled at that. Minato, on the other hand, was most likely sleeping with many women, probably wooing them with his status as Hokage, but he wouldn't dare try any advances on some, her clansmen, Mikoto or Aisane or anyone related to them. So, aside from them, Naruto figured the rest of the village's female were fair game. The same could have been said for Mikoto and Sum. Mikoto had been signed away before her birth on a marriage contract, so she was in a loveless marriage. Naruto had also learned recently that Fugaka had no love for her, only having 2 children as per the contract's agreement. So Naruto figured she had never truly felt the touch of a man aside from the 2 times she had sex to conceive Aisane and Sasuke. Sum wasn't married when she had Kiba and Hana. She had always been a cold person and had gotten drunk with one of her best friends that was a part of the clan. They fooled around a bit, her virginity being taken in the process, and when she found out she was pregnant, the man ran for the hills, even going so far as to leave the clan. Both were proud women like his birth mother. Naruto knew that for a fact. They wouldn't grace just any man with their intimacy. Naruto chuckled lightly again. He was probably getting more than his father ever did. Naruto didn't classify himself as a womanizer, just a man with many options available to him at any given time or place. He looked back at the piece of paper in his hand and looked at a nearby street sign. The waitress lived in an apartment, so it would be in an apartment complex, of course. He turned to his left on another street, and proceeded forward when he came to a building. It was at least 3 stories tall, white in color, 2 windows with each apartment along with red stairs that stopped on every floor. The roof had yellow-orange tiles on it. He felt his followers/stalkers jump to another building as he walked up to the stairs to apartment 3A on the 3rd floor. He stood in front on the door and knocked on it 3 times. He waited a moment. 1 second! A voice called from the other side, signifying the waitress was indeed there. Naruto waited a moment before the door opened to reveal the waitress, dressed in a simple white t-shirt, her hair up in a bun, and her pink panties clearly visible. "Ohio, Naruto-kun," she purred as she propped herself on the door frame, a sultry grin on her face. "I actually never caught your name." Naruto chuckled lightly as she stepped aside to let him inside. He noticed it was nicely furnished with a red leather couch, 32-inch flat-screen television in the living room, a coffee table in front of the couch with a black rug below it. It had hardwood floors that looked freshly polished. The walls were painted a dull whitish gray, and it also sported an overhead fan that was turned on. A kitchen was connected to the living room with blue countertops, microwave, stove, and double sink with a dishwasher as well. It had a few pictures, some of which seemed to have her as a little girl with her parents, and others with another woman. The woman had dull blonde hair that seemed lightly frizzy with a few loose strands. She had a pair of tinted ocular glasses and usually sported a white doctor's coat with blue undershirt and dark blue skirt and a Konoha forehead protector around her waist. She seemed cute in Naruto's opinion. Said woman was also sitting on the red leather couch with only her shirt and skirt on, sporting a deep, crimson blush on her face while looking at the ground. Naruto swore he heard a threesome from outside of the apartment, but paid it no mind aside from pegging it as his mother saying that. "It's Otoha," she smiled at him while he nodded before stepping inside the apartment before she closed the door behind him. "And why is she here?" Naruto asked as he gestured to the woman in blue before he took off his black sandals and sat them next to the door. "This is Shiho. She's a 20-year-old virgin and she's going to join us," Otoha said with a sultry grin. "Is that a problem?" she asked Naruto while Shiho ebbed lightly before she sunk into the couch. Naruto chuckled lightly. "Of course not," he said with a little mirth in his voice. Shiho merely ebbed again, making Otoha giggle lightly. Meanwhile Naruto moved over to the couch and sat down beside the shy Kunoichi and watched with a little humor in his eyes as he saw her shy away from him lightly with a blush on her face. Naruto noticed that Otoha had a white uniform on the counter in the kitchen. It looked like a nurse's uniform. "I thought you were a waitress?" he asked her absently while she walked over. "I got a job earlier at the hospital. I finished school a week ago and the hospital accepted me today," Otoha explained, making Naruto nod his head. Anyways, Shiho-chan's a prude and shy as hell. I thought that maybe if she could lose her V-plates then maybe she'd loosen up a little, Otoha explained as she sat down beside Naruto and watched curiously as he put his tanto on the table. Why'd you bring your sword with you? She asked as she ran her fingers up his arm. If Naruto wasn't as experienced as he was then he would have shivered at the touch. Shinobi rule number 6, never go anywhere unprotected, Naruto explained as he trailed his fingers up her bare leg making her visibly shudder. Not even in your home village? Her eyes became half-lidded as his breath was felt on her skin. He inched ever so closely to her making her face blush lightly. Especially not in your home village, he responded lightly as his arms snaked around her waist before rubbing her womanhood. She gasped making her mouth form an O shape before he took her in a lustful kiss making an observing Shiho eep again. So wanna explain how you got that tattoo? Kisame explained as she, Naruto and Mei sat around the campfire at their campsite. Naruto didn't say anything as he continued to look at the intricate artwork that comprised the tattoo. Come on, Naruto-kun, since you didn't hunt for food the least you can do is tell us where you got it. We're in the middle of the forest so you couldn't have got it by traditional means, Mei asked their sensei with a cute pout. Naruto looked up at them before raising his right hand. It counted down. 3, 2, 1. Ah! They heard a voice scream making Mei and Kisame jump up frantically while White Zetsu came running through some foliage with a very large black bear barreling after him completely ignoring Mei, Naruto, and Kisame. I did go hunting with Zetsu as bait, he said simply as his sickle poofed into existence from its seal. Looks like we're having bear tonight he trailed off as he walked to find the bear and Zetsu. Naruto's dull cerulean eyes slowly opened to see the inside of the tent he was sleeping in. His chakra sensing abilities extended immediately to feel for hostiles. He grunted in annoyance at how Mei and Kisame were leaking out chakra like there was no tomorrow. If Zetsu weren't on watch they might have been dead due to enemy assassins. Well, Mei and Kisame would have been. Naruto sat up before he rolled his neck making several popping sounds resonate from the vertebrae. He put his hands on the ground to his left before he pushed in that direction making his back pop as well. He did the same with his right side. One had to be limber for a day's worth of travel. Once Naruto was done he sat straight up before putting both hands on his head and then running them through his hair to rid himself of any knots that would have accumulated throughout the night. Once satisfied he looked down at his current attire. His sickle, gun and armor were each sealed along his arms and his shirt was beside him leaving him shirtless. He picked up the article of clothing before throwing it over his shoulder. He slipped on his closed-toe sandals before exiting the tent. His pupils dilated as they met the early morning sun, taking in the light. He stood there, breathing in the air of the unpolluted forest. His mind drifted while calming. Walking to Yugakure will take quite some more time than I have allotted myself. We will make it there by nightfall and if my 2 students cannot keep up, then that is their problem, Naruto thought as he reached back inside his tent to the satchel. He pulled out a scroll about the size of the summoning scroll he had used to be reverse summoned to Kaidanayama, Colossal Mountain, and held it. He stretched his arms and legs before putting the scroll onto the ground. He channeled chakra to his left leg before kicking the scroll open. A moment later a large poof of smoke came from the scroll and once it dissipated it revealed several weapons. Katanas, broadswords, zanbatos, and other assorted weapons came from the scroll. They were cheap weapons meant to be used in battle, broken, and then get a new one to replace it. He was no novice to Bukujutsu but he also was far from the best outside of his sickle/scythe, and gunbai. He exhaled deeply as he put a hand on a plain-looking zanbato with a silver blade, gray hilt, and regular cloth wrapped around said hilt. He disappeared in a burst of speed and if someone were nearby, they would hear trees falling. But one thing was clear to him. He would get an actual zanbato, one that he could use in countless battles. And he knew just who to get one from. It wouldn't be easy, and he didn't know the location of the sword's owner but one way or another he would acquire it. Previous night, Konohagakure point of view, Kushina. I honestly couldn't believe my eyes. There he was, my baby boy, furiously trading tongues with this woman, Otoha, was her name. Despite just now being knowledgeable of her existence, made a bad taste roll around in my mouth. It made me proverbially sick to my stomach to watch this carry on, a small pit forming as well. Why did this aggravate me so much? Why did this annoy me? Why did this make me want to snap this woman's neck in the most violent way possible? I was prone on a nearby building with gray tile on it with my hands clasping onto the center tile for support. I clenched my eyes shut as I put my head on the center tile. I swore I heard cracking from the tile I was holding myself up with but paid it no mind. I glanced at Sum and Mikoto that were on either side of me and saw that both had their eyes glued to the window we were looking through. The glazed look they had in their eyes didn't go unmissed by me either. I briefly acknowledged Shursui say something about what he was doing was going against the bro code but I paid it barely mind even as he jumped away. I clenched my eyes once more as I pulled myself up just before I forced my orbs open to see Naruto pulling his shirt off and the waitress in her undergarments both reigniting a furious lust-filled kiss. I recognized Hinata and Ino's chakra signatures leaving at this point. Probably too light-hearted for it. My eyes traveled back to my son's body. Oh my, I thought as I looked at his chiseled torso. I refocused on the scene to see the waitress now straddling Naruto while he was sitting on the couch, the other woman in the room stealing the occasional glance at the pair. I saw him reaching behind the waitress back to unclip the bra in one swift motion with a single hand. He must be good at this, I inwardly giggled slightly, though I felt my face heat up again. Damn it, why was this getting to me? This made me recall my love life before the divorce with Minato. Before we married, I loved that man with all my heart. I didn't look at another man, didn't speak to another man, I didn't do anything. I was so in love with the fourth Hokage. The first time we had sex, after our honeymoon, was so special to me, but I quickly noticed that Minato didn't have that much of a libido, so even after giving birth, we didn't go at it like rabbits. I found that I myself didn't have much of a libido either, save every couple months or so. Hell, even after the divorce I didn't masturbate that much. However, this act, this little peeping session, was making me ache. Ache for the touch of another, for all the pent-up frustration to be released. No, I thought. I've controlled it. I won't turn into a $2 whore just to please my own urges. I had told myself that many of times. I was absolutely positive Sim and Makoto were like that too. I zoned back in to see Uchiha grinding on Naruto, as he expertly licked on her and sucked on her as a breastfeeding child would. She was moaning uncontrollably and rocking back and forth, moaning Naruto's name. It made my skin boil to watch this, but I had to. No, I needed to watch this, though the reason I needed to was unknown to even myself. He detached himself from the right breast before proverbially attacking the left one. He raised his right hand and caressed the previous one, the waitress moaning even more than before. I saw him reach his unoccupied left hand behind her to grope her behind. Minato was never one for foreplay, so this was new to me. He never did anything other than missionary either. What was Naruto to me? Was he just my son? Was he no longer my son? Was he something more? Point of view, Makoto. Naruto attacked the waitress' lips once more, claimed them with his own as she writhed above him. I saw him use his left hand to caress her mound, was that still clad in its panties. Oh, how I longed to feel pleasure like this girl seemed to be feeling, the touch of another. It must have been wonderful. The faces she was making, the sounds my chakra-enhanced ears were picking up, and the body movement she did, it looked simply wonderful. Oh, if I weren't born as an Uchiha and some simple, clanless girl, then I wouldn't have been signed away before my birth and or conception. If only, I sighed dreamily. However, as much as Sum and Kushina said I didn't have it, my Uchiha pride wouldn't allow me to sleep with a simple commoner. It demanded someone who was not weak or a commoner. But he's a kid. Kushina's child no less. I rationalized to myself. Then again, this isn't something a kid would do, I thought as I looked away from the scene, a slight blush on my face. A moment later I looked back to see the waitress kneeling in front of Naruto, a sultry grin on her face as he caressed the back of her head. I saw her hand reach for the zipper in his pants, the bulge clearly visible as she ran her fingers across his black trousers. She unzipped them and parted the slot before unbuttoning his pants and pulling them down. She took off his shoes for him, pulled his pants off of him, with some of his assistance, and before I knew it he was only clad in a pair of red boxers. The waitress grinned again before she reached inside Naruto's boxers and pulled out his very large member. I could hear Tsum and Kushina gasp while I did as well. Naruto's member was nothing to scoff at as it was standing at a proud 8 inches, and with him being only 15 he still had room to grow. Definitely bigger than Fugaku's, I thought as my face was now sporting a full-blown blush as a slight grin was brought to my face. Naruto-kun, you sure do live up to your reputation. Uchiha smiled sultrily as he kicked off his last remaining article of clothing before she knelt in front of him. He gently put a hand on the back of her head and guided her to where she was right beside his shaft. You want this, don't you? I heard him say. One could practically smell the arousal she was exuding. Of course, she said as she rubbed his manhood with her left hand before putting her face right next to it. Well, I don't think you deserve it, he said with a slight smirk, making her gasp in a playful manner. Oh my, Naruto-sama, that is bad. Perhaps I could provide some incentive to help you change your mind, she said in a low tone before reaching out with her tongue and licking the side of his shaft. Please me and I'll think about it, he said with an amused expression. She merely smirked in a playful manner. I think I can do that. Uchiha smiled as she lowered herself, and she began to lick at his sensitive testicles before grasping his member with her left hand. She then began to make a pumping motion, making him smirk in a feral manner. As she worked his shaft he looked over to Shiho, and he seemed to like what he found. Shiho's glasses were off to the side on a nearby table, revealing her heterochromatic eyes, one blue the other brown. However, they were both closed shut as she pleasured herself, her right hand pleasuring her mound while the other was sensually rubbing her left breast. She had taken down her ponytail and a few strands were on her face, and she was sweating. She had her mouth clenched as she seemed to hit a particularly sensitive spot. Her sleeveless red dress was pulled down to where her breasts were clearly visible, and she had long laid her lab coat beside her. I could see her toes curl as she played with herself. All sorts of shame that would have come from a clear-minded individual were long gone as this girl's mind was taken over by lust, her carnal desires, and her desire to finally get laid. Or at least that's what I thought about the matter, but I was also probably right. Yeah, I was right. Point of view, Tsum. I shivered, and then I shivered again, and once more. Oh my Kami, I was so horny. Just watching this was getting me off. Come on, Tsum girl. Pull yourself together. I thought as I watched Naruto dominate the two girls. He had pulled the second girl, Shiho, into the mix by pulling her into his lap, kissing her while using one hand to finger her, and the other to guide that waitress, Otoha. It seems that he's done this before, I thought as I watched. Sure, I had read smut before, rented some late-night dirty flicks, but that was nothing compared to what was happened before me. I knew for a fact that my panties would be wet if I checked them. Did I like watching Naruto have sex with these two women? Judging from the little voice in my head screaming at me to take the young 15-year-old man home and have him ravish me to no end. As a matter of fact, yes, I did like watching this. At least I know what I'll be masturbating to tonight, I chuckled dryly. I then tried to rein myself in. Oh my Cammy, this is so wrong, but this feels so right. But he's a kid. Should kids be doing this sort of thing in the first place? He's Kushina's son. He's an alpha and you know it. Yukifuru, Kiba's father, was a brash man and I often wondered if that was where Kiba got his attitude from. Yukifuru was fairly attractive, not amazingly hot, but he was still good looking. Yukifuru had always wanted me, and then when I woke up next to him after a drunken stir, he had a grin on his face, but as soon as I found out I was pregnant, he ran away like the coward he was. But Naruto had an air about him. It was like he was confident but calm, rational, and quiet at the same time. From the time I had known him after he returned from the forest of death, he was cold. I honestly didn't like that. Where was that sweet little bundle of blonde energy from 7 years ago? It was like he just upped and left without even a goodbye. He was replaced by this man before me, a cold-hearted man that had seemed to have a very high libido. I chuckled dryly after that remark. I saw him unzip Shiho's dress before pulling the one-piece dress off of the cryptologist, leaving her in a pair of white and red panties and bra. He chuckled as he stuck out his tongue before leaving a trail down the woman's neck, making her moan loudly. I looked back down to Otoha to see Naruto's shaft now gone as she had engulfed it in her mouth, furiously sucking and licking at it. She seemed desperate for him to come. A loud groan seemed to alert her as a moment later he proverbially exploded in her mouth. She sat there for a moment to make sure none was left before she moved away from Naruto's manhood, of which was still standing proud. She waved a finger at Shiho, who was still trading tongues with Naruto. The cryptologist stopped her inexperienced ministrations before looking at the new nurse. Her eyes widened as she found herself in a lip lock with her roommate, the latter of which still had Naruto's semen in her mouth, as I had not seen her gulp. The cryptologist's eyes widened as a warm substance was put into her mouth from Otoha before she eagerly accepted the salty substance. I looked back at Naruto, and he seemed amused at the least if that smirk on his face was anything to go by. A moment later of watching the two, Naruto arose from his spot on the couch and grabbed Otoha by the hips before guiding her away from Shiho. He was smirking as she was kissing his neck before she was put on the couch, chest first, so that she was still standing by her legs and her ass was in the air with her face on the back support cushion, all the while angling her neck so that she would be almost facing Naruto. The only male in the room didn't even bother removing her panties, opting to simply guide them away from his prize. A pink slit was revealed to me. It had a patch of black hair above which looked to be neatly trimmed, to say the least. I honestly didn't know how deprived I was until tonight, and honestly I knew who could fill the hole in my life. Pun intended. Point of view, third person. Without much warning, Naruto slammed into Otoha, gaining a scream of pleasure for his work. He smirked in satisfaction. Her moans were music to his ears, and the pleasure he was receiving himself was no small consolation prize either. He hit her cervix repeatedly as he pounded into her, her moans progressing to screams of ecstasy before regressing back to moans and then back to screams. She had obviously not been fucked like this before, and he intended to give her the ride of a lifetime. He stopped abruptly, making her finally release a breath she didn't know she was even holding. That was only before she yelped as he picked her up, plunging her deeper onto his shaft, all the while sending shockwaves of pleasure throughout her system. Naruto turned around and sat on the couch, making her get up to turn around and face him before placing her knees on the couch on either side of him. She smiled sensually at him as she lowered herself onto him, making a smirk appear on his lips. He bucked up suddenly, hitting her cervix in the process. She gave throaty moan before Naruto leaned forward. She latched on him, burying her head in the crook of his neck and putting her arms around him, using her fingernails to claw at his back. Naruto really didn't mind the clawing, as Yoshino was worse. He often left the Nara compound with bite marks on his neck. Still smirking, he bucked again, making another throaty moan come from her throat. He continued this as he snaked both hands around to her backside, massaging her somewhat bountiful behind, making her smirk above him as she continued to ride him. Up and down, that was the rhythmic motion that an onlooker would see. Grunts and moans filled the apartment as the two gave into their lusts. Otoha gyrated her hips against Naruto's as he watched the hypnotic movement of Otoha's breasts bouncing up and down. "Oh Naruto-sama, you are so good at this." It's no wonder Haruno-san was talking about this herself when she was in the Akimichi restaurant earlier this week, Otoha purred as she turned around and got off of Naruto. She then sat back in his lap before guiding his member to her waiting snatch. Naruto merely chuckled. It seems that Mabuki does not know how to keep her mouth shut. I might have to teach her a lesson later this week, he said more to himself with the smirk still in place. Oh Naruto-sama, maybe I can get in on this too. Otoha was cut off as Naruto abruptly slammed into her. Enough talk, he almost growled, making her already pouring sex wetter. Her eyes bulged and her mouth opened up in an O shape. Her back was pressed against his chest as Naruto raised his back and hips before he began to slam into her repeatedly. Oh, and in Naruto-sama. I've come so many times. I see can't hold it. She screamed as her eyes began to roll back. Ecstasy was the only thing she could feel right then. Naruto released a loud grunt. Oh Naruto-sama! She screamed as her inner walls clenched around him. He released a primal growl as he passed the point of no return before he stopped abruptly. Uchiha released a loud, satisfied moan as she was filled with him. After a few seconds he pulled her off of him, and sat her on the couch, making both of their juices spill from her snatch. He looked over to Shiho expecting to see a whimpering woman, only to find said woman waving a finger in his direction as if enticing him to claim a prize. I presume you looked at a multitude of pornography films? He smirked as she simply nodded before spreading her lower lips, a small smirk of her own in place. Naruto's smirk seemed to grow slightly as he picked her up by the sides, her legs wrapping themselves around his own sides. She crashed her lips to his a moment later, not caring how sensual the kiss was, only that she had contact with him. He unclipped her bra and threw it away before he began to lightly nibble on her left teat, making a moan escape her lips. After a moment he slammed her against a nearby wall, making some previously unknown masochistic tendencies surface as she seemed to scream in both pain and pleasure. You're inexperienced, so I suggest you let me handle this. And after the first few moments I won't be gentle, he told her, his breath right on her skin. Her face flushed as she turned away to avoid eye contact. Hi, she stuttered slightly as he looked down to see that her panties were already off. Naruto smirked. He lined up his member before taking her lips in a sloppy kiss. She accepted nonetheless, but a moment later her world exploded and her eyes watered as he penetrated her, her hymen breaking in the process. She came what a little masochist, Naruto thought as he smirked once more. And Naruto-kun, she said timidly as she tried to get his lips in a kiss. Oh, how she loved this. He pulled out on by a bit. She whimpered at the loss, only for her walls to clench one more as he slammed back into her, her back hitting the wall in the process. You're tight, he said absently as he developed a good pace. Tighter than that other woman, he said with a grunt as her walls tightened again, signifying she had come again. You're so good at this, and Naruto-kun, Shiho said as she bit into his shoulder as he hit her cervix. I've been told, he said with some amusement in his voice. I'm close, Naruto said after no small amount of strokes. And Naruto-kun, come with me, Shiho shouted as her walls tightened. The tightness became too much as Naruto gave into the pleasure. Shiho screamed in ecstasy while Naruto merely grunted as he unloaded into her. He smirked in victory and gathered up his clothes before going to find their bathroom. 10 minutes later he exited Uchiha and Shiho's apartment fully clothed, and he was confident that his stalkers were gone, only to look down to see one person he didn't expect. Danzo Aji-san. Naruto nodded in the older man's direction, making him nod back. Danzo had brown hair with streaks of gray and charcoal eyes. He also had an X scar on his chin. For attire he wore the top half of a kimono that was white in color. For lower clothing he wore a simple black mantle tied together with a white obi. On his feet he wore a pair of black sandals. He also had a cane in his left hand. Did you enjoy yourself? Danzo chuckled, drawing a smirk from Naruto as the two began to walk towards the Sarutobi residence. It was 11 and like it or not, Naruto had a curfew of 12 and he would abide by it. Yes I did, the younger of the two chuckled. I remember when I had a libido. Danzo laughed lightly as well as Naruto. After a few minutes the latter spoke. You usually don't visit for pleasantries. I can only assume you have a mission for me? Naruto asked him, making the old man lose the smile on his face. Yes, as a matter of fact I do, Danzo said with no playfulness this time. Believe it or not, the Forest of Death was only so large, and those that looked for Naruto during the 2 years he was missing would have eventually found him. They were all highly trained shinobi and kunoichi, and he was simply an 8-year-old boy. After 6 months of living off what wasn't poisonous and learning the layout of the training ground, he was found, but not by Hiruzen or any main Konoha affiliates. He was found by Root or Na operatives. If Naruto would kill one, 2 more would take their place. Training for 3 years and knowing the landscape of the grounds, Naruto put up quite the formidable fight, earning his stage 2 Sharingan in the process, but he was overpowered and taken to the secret base below Konoha. He awoke in a warm bed, new clothes, and he seemed to have been bathed. Danzo was the first person he saw after he woke up, and the old man had congratulated the young Uchiha for lasting so long. After the first month of being completely hostile to the old man, Naruto thought of a plan to simply use the man as a catalyst to attain a higher level of power, and Danzo knew full well of what the youngling was doing but said nothing. The reason Danzo did what he did was because he wanted an heir. He was infertile and sadly could not have children of his own, and he would not allow the roots of Konoha to wither and die. A year and a half later, by then Naruto saw the man as a grandfather figure and had lost his power-hungry views, and on his 13th birthday, Danzo named the young Uchiha the second in command of Root. During the time between his 10th birthday and the present, Naruto had accomplished many missions and was no stranger to killing or leaving comrades behind. They were replaceable just as Danzo had said they were. You know I have no love for Konoha, yet you continue to deploy me in its name. Why is that? Naruto asked curiously as he crossed his arms all the while walking as he did. I know this, Naruto-kun. I have known this for many years now. Danzo paused, not looking at Naruto as the younger of the two did the same to Danzo. However, you are the only one able to complete the missions I give you. What is it? The blonde asked. I wish for you to make sure Konoha's assets are still dispensable. I wish for you to go and check on Tsunade Senju. She is currently in Yugakure. Danzo spoke in a businesslike fashion. Naruto nodded. You leave at 4 in the morning and are expected to be there in 2 days' time. I trust you have a sealed shadow clone for this occasion? Danzo asked. Yes, I do. They have been gathering chakra since 1 month ago in a storage scroll in my room, Naruto explained as they drew near to the Sarutobi residence. Excellent. Drop by the headquarters to acquire your mask before you leave. I trust you will not fail this mission, Kuraso? Crow, Danzo asked, and no wasn't an answer. Hi, Danzo, Naruto said as he nodded his head. He refused to use the suffix sama on anyone's name. Complete this and I will give you a graduation present, Danzo said with a chuckle as he turned around to walk in the other direction. He didn't bother to say goodbye as Naruto was already gone. Present time, with Naruto and Ko. If anything, Naruto was a patient man. He had to be. It took time to get one's chakra under their command. Chakra control took enormous amounts of time for him to learn, especially with his reserves. He had to be patient to relearn chakra control exercises after augmenting his chakra capacity with the young Kyubis. But this was simply wasteful of his time. He had arrived at Yugakure by 8 p.m. from his position in Nami no Kuni, Wave Country, evaded Konoha Shinobi all the way through Hai no Kuni, Fire Country, and was in the capital of Yu no Kuni, land of hot water. But how difficult was it to find 2 women and a pig? He drew many stares from women and men alike, the latter with a look of envy while the former was mainly lust. The envy came from being around a beauty like Mei and an exotic beauty like Kisame, while the lust was directed more at Naruto, making his 2 students glare at the women. He was deemed a genius by his own grandfather, and the one thing he didn't understand was women. They were truly odd. He had known Mei and Kisame for 3 days and yet they were already showing signs of a small infatuation with him? Ludicrous. The young Uchiha had his arms crossed and his eyes closed. Mei and Kisame were in awe at all of the hot springs and elegant-looking hotels and clubs. They had most likely never been outside of Mizu no Kuni, water country, so it was understandable. He almost growled as he took a scroll from his pocket and took off his armor in the middle of the street before sealing it as well as his kama and gone by. He needed to visit a blacksmith at a later date. He needed a collapsible kama. Now that would come in handy. He drew many strange looks as he sealed his weapons and armor, but from Naruto's knowledge, Yugakure used to be a ninja village, but that was some time ago, so it was understandable that the civilians here had never seen a ninja. Boss-kun, why are you looking for this Tsunade Senju? You never told us, Kisame asked with a raised eyebrow as the 3 walked. Naruto didn't respond as he concentrated on his sensor abilities as they extended. He really hadn't practiced with them, so it only had a maximum range of 100 yards. It honestly shouldn't be that difficult to find mid to low Kage level reserves even without his sensor abilities. This woman must have been very adept at black magic. A moment later his head turned to the left, acknowledging Kisame's question. Acknowledge? Yes. Answer. No. I suggest you seal away Samahata, Hashigaki-san, Naruto told the blue-skinned woman absently. What? Why? And you never answered the question, she said as she stopped walking, her arms being crossed in the process before a skeptical look crossed her face. Mei stopped as well. Naruto merely kept walking. You will get your answers indirectly if we find the Senju, he said, making Kisame and Mei blink olishly before both of them rubbed the back of their heads sheepishly, small, nervous chuckles escaping from their voices as well. Hee, sorry, Naruto-kun, Mei said as the 2 resumed walking, 5 paces behind Naruto as Kisame sealed the large, semi-sentient Zanbato into a scroll. Why don't you want to answer the question? Kisame asked as she sped up a little bit only to resume a normal walk on his right side, which surprised Naruto to say the least. She must have been much faster when the massive sword was not on her back. Too many prying ears, he said curtly as he scanned the crowds which were parting like the Red Sea as he and his entourage walked. You sure are a secretive person, Naruto-kun, Mei said absently as she caught up to Naruto as well, walking on his left side. The shinobi world is an unforgiving place. One can never be too careful as an enemy will capitalize on the slightest mistake, Naruto responded with his eyes still closed. This Senju woman was so very close to him, hunting her down Hunter Nin style. I'm pretty good at sensing chakra, Boss-kun, and there are only civilians around. The highest only has genin reserves, and from the way you handled those ANBU a few days ago, I'm sure you can handle this one, Kisame said as she looked at Naruto. He opened his eyes to a sliver. I began teaching you 2 on a whim. I can easily go my separate way if you don't stop prying, he told her with a sideways glare. Kisame held her hands up defensively. Sorry, she said as Mei giggled at her friend making the blue-skinned woman glare. Naruto didn't respond as he closed his eyes again only for them to open abruptly. Finally, he said as he sped up his pace and only by a margin. Mei and Kisame both raised an eyebrow as they saw their teacher walk through the crowd with a majestic fluidity, as he moved to a casino. Tsunade Senju was many things. She was a Sannin, the best medic nin ever produced, the granddaughter of the Shodame Hokage, older sister to the long-deceased Nawaki Senju, and one of her more known aspects, a person with a drinking and gambling addiction. Her usual attire consisted of a grass-green haori with the kanji for gamble on the back and between the shoulder blades, which was inside a red circle, while the haori had black trimming that stopped mid-forearm. Underneath the haori she wore a gray sleeveless, kimono-style blouse with black trimming. Holding it together was a rather broad, bluish-gray obi. For pants she wore a pair of bluish-gray capri-like pants that stopped a little below her knee but not fully at her midshin. For shoes she wore a pair of black, high-heel sandals with straps around her ankles. For physical features, she was quite beautiful. She was about 5 feet 5 inches and she held exotic amber eyes and a blue rhombus on her forehead which signified the creation, rebirth, and strength of 100 techniques. Her breasts weren't anything to scoff at either, both standing at a borderline E cup or high DD cup. On her fingernails and toenails she had painted them both red. Aha! Take that. Full house, Tsunade grinned as gambling chips were pushed her way. The Sannin downed another shot of sake. Beside her, her apprentice, Shizen, smiled happily. Their pet, Taunton, winked with what seemed like a smile. Shizen was a fair-skinned woman with average height and a slender build with black eyes and hair. Her hair was straight and shoulder-length with bangs that covered her ears and framed her face. Normally, she was seen in a long bluish-black kimono with white trimmings, held closed by a white obi, and open-toed sandals with low heels. Taunton was simply a pig with a red vest and white trimmings with a white necklace. The others around the table grumbled as they lost money. Most were mob bosses and were ill-informed. Though one had a grin on his face. His name was Gato of Gato's Shipping. He ran the majority of casinos in small countries. Though he did not own this one, he funded it heavily. Gato was a small man with black sunglasses, a business suit, and a red tie. He wore business shoes and had brown hair with a receding hairline, and the only reason he was in town was because he was sent a message by a close associate. Tsunade and Shizen were speaking, the latter worried about her master's winning streak while the former said she could mill these old farts out. The entire private room was interrupted by a knock on the door. The man guarding the door opened it to reveal a similarly dressed man before the one that knocked whispered something to the one that answered. The one that answered looked behind him before nodding. 5 seconds later a very familiar face to Gato walked in. There was Naruto in all of his intimidating glory, accompanied by 2 beauties, a fair-skinned red-head and blue-skinned, blue-haired woman. Naruto's eyes scanned the room, stopping on Tsunade briefly. He thought she was beautiful even for a 50-year-old, but the thought was gone as soon as it arrived as he nodded silently to Gato. This isn't place for kids, so I suggest you get out. One of the Yakuza bosses began before he was cut off by a man that came in carrying 4 large stacks of poker chips. Naruto merely sat as his designated seat before Mei and Kisame stood on either side of him. He intertwined his fingers and put them on the table before the faintest of grins made its way onto his face. 1 hour later, the last 2 occupants of the table were Tsunade and Naruto. Tsunade had a cocky grin as well as a drunken blush on her face, while Naruto remained impassive, his calculating gaze looking into her intoxicated and cocky ember eyes. Tsunade also had several large stacks, everyone's that had participated in fact, and most of Naruto's own. Meanwhile Naruto only had 1 stack of poker chips left. Alright, brat, you had your time in the big leagues, but it's time to leave the gambling to the big boys and girls, Tsunade said while Gato was sitting off to the side of the only 2 players. The rest of the bosses had left in a huff after they had lost all of their winnings to Tsunade, but Gato had stayed and the grin on his face had stayed throughout the entire game. He had lost 10 million ryo, but what was that to him? Shizen was biting her teeth in nervousness. This boy's expression hadn't left him the entire time he was there, and that was most troubling. She knew he was up to something. Mei and Kisame had left 10 minutes prior to get a booth at a nearby restaurant pre-Naruto's orders. Naruto looked at the cards in his hand before his chips. He had prolonged the game enough to where Tsunade had indulged a large amount of alcohol to ruin her decision-making skills. Just as planned, all in, Naruto said simply as he put his cards on the polished wood of the table and pushed his chips towards the center. Tsunade waited a second before she laughed and looked at her cards again. The boy was just another person with a good poker face. She would indulge him. There was no way he could be a straight flush. She smirked. Naruto saw her smirk. All according to plan, all in, she said as she put her cards on the table and pushed her chips to the center. Tsunade-sama. Surely you don't have to do this, Shizen tried to reason with Master, and Taunton squealed in disappointment. I've got this, the female Sannin said to her apprentice and pet pig after raising her right hand in dismissal. Kid, you've just lost. Take this. She yelled as she flipped over her cards, showing them her straight flush. She looked at Naruto, who just simply sat there, completely impassive. She guessed she had won and he simply wasn't admitting defeat. Shizen sighed in happiness. They could finally pay off their debts with this money. The 2 women then noticed the smirk. Naruto raised his right hand and one by one flipped over his cards, and when he was done, he looked Tsunade in the eye. He had a royal flush. In a 1 in 649,740 chance, and he got it. I do believe those are my winnings, he said evenly as the bodyguard in the room pushed the winnings over to Naruto. Tsunade got up to leave, a completely unreadable expression on her face with Shizen in tow, a look of sadness on hers before the still-sitting Naruto passed the latter a note seeing as how the former would have ripped it up in an instant. As the bodyguard left the room, it was only Naruto and Gato left. The cards then shimmered before they were a 2 of a kind. 10s and 8s and a single 2. Thank you for being here, Gato. I do believe I never would have entered without your exception. Naruto bowed his head slightly in thanks before he stood and began to put all of the chips in a bag. No problem, Naruto. I'm sure you will pay me back for the missing million ryo? Gato smirked, threefold. I will have your money in the morning, Naruto said to the small businessman, of which nodded and grinned. I trust your men will be on standby guarding the place if the Senju decides to go on with the operation? Of course. Just like I said. But what's the extra 2 million for? Gato asked with a raised eyebrow. To ensure that we stay friends. I need allies in this world, and in your mind, a broke ally isn't one at all, Naruto smirked slightly. Damn straight, Gato grinned as Naruto got up before leaving the room.